Welcome to Board with Video Games, the gaming podcast that strives for the right balance of coverage for games you play on your table and on your television. We're a proud member of the PSVG Podcast Network and thrilled to be part of the Dice Tower Network as well. I am one of your hosts, Kyle Hyman, and joining me on this co-op adventure, the guy who is number one on my favorite person to podcast with of all time list.
The only
Josh
person
Borboni.
to podcast with.
That is not true. I've podcasted with many people, but you're definitely number one. Josh Borboni, how are you doing this fine evening and this month, sir?
How can I not be good after that compliment? Jeez. I'm blushing over here. I'm okay, actually. I'm doing better than normal, which is a nice surprise for me.
That's great. That's
recently. Over the month in general, not great, but this past week or so has been pretty good. Work's getting better. I'm finding more time for social gaming. We'll see. We'll see where that goes. I don't want to get too happy about being happy, too excited about being happy, because then, who knows what tomorrow holds. But
yeah, I hear you. It's just because, everyone's been talking to you about scary movies. That's really why you're happy,
it
right?
Probably is part of that also. Yes. That's probably part of it too.
I was going to say, I think we've talked about this on an intro before about how happiness is such a fickle thing, because the process of chasing happiness actively makes you unhappy, right? So this idea of we all want to be happy, right? So we should strive to be happy and pursue happiness. The very act of trying to do that actually makes us unhappy, because all we think about is how we are not happy, because we're obviously having to find happiness or try to achieve happiness, which must mean that we must currently not be happy. Because otherwise that wouldn't make any sense. Why else would we try to find happiness unless we're currently unhappy?
We just want to always be happier, right?
Yeah,
that must be what it is.
I don't know, but is that really the most important thing? I know we always say that, right? You should be happy, but is happiness different than being content?
I would take content, really, if I'm being honest. I would totally take content. Over the big wide swings of happy and sad and angry and whatever, give me content. If I could get I am the perfect candidate for Severance, the TV show.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited that's coming back.
Give me just remove every thought from my life when I'm working and let me forget about work when I'm at home. That sounds great. I would probably sign up. I'd be one of those fools who signed up right away.
It does sound on the surface.
Sounds great.
Great, right? When you're at work, you don't think at all or know anything about your outside of the work life. And when you're at home, you don't have to think about or know anything about work life. That does sound really good. But very early on, it's but what if you're married? You just forget about the fact that you're married or have kids or have responsibilities. On one side, maybe that's good. I guess, I don't know, but it just, on the surface, it sounds great, but in reality, maybe it's not going to be quite as effective. I'm assuming you watched the trailer for season 2. Yeah. I'm really curious about
all of that.
Where this is going to go. Because that show was so surprising to me for how much I enjoyed it. Oh my gosh, I loved that show.
Yeah, it's a good show.
Who would have known that Ben Stiller had something like that in him?
Right?
Gosh.
Did you watch was it Shrinking? Was that the other one? With Harrison Ford and Jason Segel?
Oh, what's the name of that thing?
You should watch that. That was good. Season 2 is coming out of that too.
Is it? Okay.
And Brett Goldstein is joining season 2.
Oh, nice. I do like Brett Goldstein, so that's good. Yeah, I saw a comment today on social media. I think it was on Reddit about Jason Segel talking about why Harrison Ford agreed to be on that show, but it's not appropriate for the podcast, so I'm not going to talk about it. But it made me laugh.
Did you see the part where he was talking about when they were on the boat together?
I don't know.
They were filming a scene in season 2 where they're on a boat, and someone was talking to him "Are you friends with Harrison Ford?" And he's like, "I think I am." He's like, "We were just filming these scenes, and I have to stand and deliver the speech, and he's shaking the boat back and forth trying to knock me over." And he's like, "And I didn't fall over." And then he looks at me, he's like, "I tried," or something like that, or "Good job, kid," or he's like, "I think he's my friend."
But yeah, no, it was it was not that, but that does sound funny. It sounds like something Harrison Ford would do.
I'll have
It
to
seems
find the one you're talking about,
yeah,
or you can tell me
I can
after.
send it to you afterwards if I need to. So, gotcha. Anything else fun? Obviously we'll do recommendations at the end like we typically do, but thing else, appropriate for spooky season as this will come out right before Halloween. Anything appropriate that people should be squeezing in the last day or two before it becomes no longer socially acceptable to watch scary movies?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited because I didn't realize it was out yet, but Azrael, it just hit Shutter for people who are interested in potentially big horror movie. Has what's her name in it? The girl I really like from Ready or Not. Samara Weaving is in it. So I'm interested in checking that one out. I think it's another like Final Girl style movie. And I'm gonna try to watch some like classics this week if I want to give up gaming time. But I just got Friday the 13th on HD DVD, which I'll be excited to see how that looks on 4K, not HD DVD. That's not a thing anymore.
Yeah,
4K. Um, and I'll probably pop on a couple other like classics unless a recommendation or something drops. Actually, I do think something just came out. Shoot, there's so many horror movies. Something
there are
just
so
came
many.
out. This is not good podcasting, but um, if I make noise, you can't cut it out either. So that's funnier for me. I can't think of it. There's another movie that just came out. I'll drop it in our Discord if I remember, but I'm forgetting now. But there's a bunch of stuff on HBO now, like Cadu Lake came out, and from the kid from Love and Monsters. He's been in another, like, maybe Maze Runner. He was in one of those, like, YA movies.
Mm,
I'm just forgetting which one it was. Uh, and Salem's Lot is on HBO right now, which is a movie. I think it's a series that was turned into a movie. Uh, so yeah, there's definitely stuff out there. But hit me up on the Discord if you want recommendations, if anyone's listening.
I'm assuming you've seen this, and if you've told me I need to watch this, I apologize. Maybe it's on the list that I have that I haven't looked at. Have you? I'm assuming you've watched Smile.
No, I haven't watched
Oh,
Smile.
okay. Because I know
I
Smile
think
2 is.
Donnie liked it fine.
Oh, okay.
It was. I'm interested in it, but it's. I feel like it's. I don't know. It doesn't. It's not in my like uh style of horror that I love, where it
Okay.
focuses on the grotesque for like potentially to be grotesque. Like I haven't seen it, so I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, some of that stuff like I give it passes. And Trap was the movie that just said HBO. That's what I was thinking
Mm.
of,
Yeah,
which I do want to watch.
I do know that, the original Smile I think did pretty well. Like people
Yeah, it was
seem to
very
like, and
successful.
yeah, and Smile 2 has gotten really really good reviews. So apparently it's supposed to be pretty good, I guess. I don't know. I
Yeah, I'll
think
probably check it out at some point.
the concept of it is very interesting to me. But I'm also not I don't know, like I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who might watch it, but like what happens as a result of the concept is not something that I know I totally would enjoy watching,
Yeah,
right? Like, um, so it seems just like a very okay horror. This is gonna sound dumb because it's a horror movie, but maybe this will make sense to you. It sounds like a very cruel concept,
sure.
right? Like just really not a
Well, it's like It Follows, like kind of thing, right? Where you're like giving this thing to someone. Is that how the
yeah,
premise of
but
it?
yeah, it is like an It Follows or even like The Ring
Yeah.
in the sense of like you have X number of days but there's a very specific way from what I understand. I haven't seen it that you have to give it to someone else.
Okay.
And it's just very cruel. So,
Yeah.
you know, but I loved It Follows, which is why I was like, oh, and then when I heard someone else explain, I was like, okay, it kind of sounds like It Follows and The Ring kind of like mooshed together a little bit.
Well, maybe you
Um,
convinced me to watch it. Where's it streaming on?
I think it's on Paramount. I think because the original movie was gonna be I think direct to Paramount Plus project initially, and then for whatever reason they decided to release it in theaters.
Yeah, it looks like Paramount, maybe even Hulu, Paramount Plus, Disney. But Disney Plus, that's funny.
Oh
Uh,
wow! Oh, because of Hulu. Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
that makes sense then,
it's a fun thing.
yeah.
Open a Disney Plus to watch Smile.
Yeah, so, but yeah, and then, I don't know if you, looked ahead, but maybe for my recommendations, you'll see
Yeah,
that I have
I'm
been
interested to hear.
yeah, so well, I mean,
How's
I'm
things been
recommending
for
it.
you? We didn't get to you.
Things are good, I guess. I think things are good. I have my dissertation proposal defense on Halloween. So on that day, I get to
Spooky.
sit before my committee and anyone else who wants to show up and be like, "Hey, here's the study I want to do and how I'm going to do it. Is it cool if I do it?" And then they tell me yes or no. So they tell me no, it's going to be a problem. But
Yeah.
so my 75 or 85-page dissertation proposal is done, and then I just got to actually do the study to finish my dissertation. But we're getting there. So
Nice.
yeah, but
Good
everything
luck.
there's ready to go. But that's been a lot of this month. Has just been working on making sure that's ready to go and good to go and all that good stuff. But yeah, so it's good. It just hopefully uh wanting to get to that point and get that wrapped up. And other than that, it's been pretty, I don't know, I I hate to say boring, because like boring sounds so trite, like nothing happens, right? Like,
It
oh, your
sounds
life.
content to me.
Well, it's content in the sense of like every day is kind of a little bit of Groundhog Day. If I go to work,
Sure.
come home, I do homework, maybe play a game or two if I have some time, and then go to bed, do the same thing the next day, right? Like I yeah, and I'm okay with that. Like I'm not. It's not bad from my perspective. It also just knows that I can't imagine that's very exciting for anyone else to
Right.
hear about. So you know.
Well, I'm sure people can relate. It makes sense.
Yeah, it is what it is. But hey, yeah, I'm really curious. We're obviously going to talk about our favorite board games of all time today. I have no idea how long it's going to take us to talk about that.
Yeah, that is a good question. Who knows?
Yeah, who
Should we
knows?
do the
So,
news afterwards?
well, no, I think we'll do it pretty quick first. I don't think this is going to take this long. I don't think this one will take as long. I think next month when we do our video games, I think that might take longer. But I don't know that this is going to take quite as long. But we are going to kind of switch the order up and stuff. So we'll talk about that last. So we will very briefly touch on some video game things and stuff like that in case anybody just wants to stick around for that. And then we'll do the board game list at the end. But with that, then let's transition, talk a little podcasty stuff. So, hey, thanks so much for joining us this month, everyone. As always, if you have any feedback, questions, or suggested topics, hit us up at Board with VG on Twitter or check out all the awesome stuff over on the Instagram. Also, Board with VG. We are proud to be part of the Play Some Video Games podcast family, and we encourage you to check out all of the shows like the PSVG podcast, the Nintendo Shack, and PSXP. You never know when a new show might pop up, like, hey, Decade of Horror had their annual show recently. So be sure to stay tuned to all of your favorite PSVG podcasts to stay up to date. We're also a member of the Dice Tower Podcast Network. So if you enjoy our conversations about board games and would like to dive deeper into that world, we encourage you to check out the Dice Tower Podcast as well as all of the other members of the network. No matter what type of board games you enjoy, there's a podcast on the network that's right for you. With that, we'll kind of move on and talk a little bit about what we've been playing. We actually, compared to last month, both have pretty short lists.
Yeah.
And actually, I just saw something I do want to add on very, very briefly here. So, Josh, with that, talk to me. What have you been playing this month, sir?
Well, yeah, it's been a quiet month for
Yeah,
gaming. I don't know why, uh, but it has been. Well, I do know why. A lot of my time, I've been putting a lot of hours into Diablo 4. So that's really where most of my gaming time has gone to. Not a problem to me at all. Really, what our nights have turned into here is dinner, Mario Party Jamboree. My son goes to bed. I go to bed. I play Diablo 4. I go to sleep every night. So that's 2 games right there. So yeah, Diablo 4. I finally completed the campaign officially with my character. There's like a weird quest post game, and it's very like vague on how to complete it. So I'm trying to figure out how to do that without googling it, and then I will eventually Google it when I have to figure out how
gotcha.
to do it. But right now, I'm just working on clearing off the map any of my fog of war locations because I found like a stronghold in one of them. So working on doing that with my barbarian, and then once I do that, I'm gonna jump on the expansion and jump into that. But we have some games coming up soon in a few
Yeah.
days, actually. That's gonna take up a good chunk of my gaming time, potentially. But yeah, also Mario Party Jamboree. This was something we got for my son, and it's great. We've been playing it almost every night. He's loving it. I'm winning mostly, which is nice. Um, my wife has been playing with us as well. And yeah, they just kind of did a really good job. They did lock some things, like you have to unlock. There's two characters you have to find a way to unlock. We had to unlock at least one map. There might be another map we have to unlock. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's challenging. It's entertaining. They added these partners, these buddies in the game
Mhm.
now that'll drop in. What I didn't know about this was most of it actually. I didn't look a lot into this game when it came out, but basically these characters will come down at random points in the game. They only stay for 3 turns, and then once you get them, they only stay with you for 3 turns. So there's a lot of times we don't get them at all. Once you do get to them, it's like collecting a star. It stops your progress on the board, and then you have to play a mini game to get them. Some of them are easy, like short, like Rosalina's just like a snowboarding one. Luigi's is like a 8 level Luigi's Mansion game,
Oh,
so it's
okay.
much more in depth. Mario's like a three different mini games. I'm trying to think who else we got. Um, but anyway, once you get that, it doesn't matter who lands on the partner. Whoever wins the mini game gets the partner. The partner just gets a boost or an advantage at the start of the game, the first like whatever it is. But also, anytime someone passes another person with a buddy, that buddy just follows the other person. So it's very like kind of chaotic, and it really does mix it up a lot when you're playing. So we didn't really explore any of the other things they packed into this Mario Party game that aren't really Mario Party.
Right.
Um, but and I don't know if we will. Really, we're just enjoying family game night with it. So it's been fun. I really enjoy it. If you like Mario Party, like this is a no-brainer. This is a great Mario Party game, and you get way more characters to choose from now,
Very
which is
cool.
always nice. So yeah, that's very cool. Lockdown Protocol is a PC game that we continue to play. It's a lot of fun. I roped my wife into playing too. She played with us last night. It's essentially first person Among Us. I think I talked about it before in here. Still good, still fun. It's still fun trying to be. Uh, well, I'll tell you this: Kevin Austin, my dear friend Kevin Austin, he just kills me. He doesn't. He's just like, I just assume you're bad, so I'm going to kill you. And most of the times, I'm not bad. It's the times when he doesn't kill me is when I'm bad. So it's mixed
Okay.
messaging.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's weird.
So like he was like, I last night he's like, I saw you throw a knife on the ground, so I shot you. I'm like, but I threw it on the ground. He's like, yeah, but you look suspicious when you did that. And I'm like, okay, sure, but I was not the bad guy at that point in time. And then I told him later, I was like, I threw it on the ground because I picked up a gun and I needed that slot to hold it. So even worse. That's my defense thing. Get a gun right away. Good or bad, have a gun. Makes that game a lot of fun. It's very chaotic though. And last but not least, game that you didn't even make your list is Warhammer Space Marine 2, a game I'm playing with Kyle.
Well, because we had talked about it before, but I
We
guess
had
we
talked about it
finished it.
before. We
Yeah.
have since completed the campaign, and we have moved on to, I believe it's called Incursions. Is that what it's
Yeah, I
called?
believe that's what they're called. Yeah.
Incursion mode, which is essentially just like one-off campaign missions. They're about an hour long, so when we play, we know we get a good two of those in us before we call it a night. But
Yep.
it's been a lot of fun. I really like the game. It's still challenging as heck, which I enjoy. Uh, so yeah, that's all I've been playing.
So I have a couple questions for you, Josh.
Oh sure,
Number one, Diablo 4.
yeah,
So you finished the campaign, which I'll
yes,
be honest, I don't know why. I assumed you had finished the campaign previously. I don't know
yeah.
why, but I had assumed that. Uh, did you buy the DLC prior to finishing the campaign?
I haven't bought it yet.
Oh, you haven't bought it yet? Okay, never mind then. Then I have no questions. I was gonna ask if, like, the DLC did that anything to, like, help you finish the campaign
Oh,
more
no, no, no. I
expediently.
mean, yes, it does add mercenaries, so that would
Oh,
help
okay.
you. That would help you complete the campaign.
Gotcha. I was just curious there. And then Warhammer Space Marine 2. Obviously, we've been playing that on, our when we've been playing games together. Where, when I talked about this last time, I talked about how, hey, I feel like this is potentially gonna be pretty high on my game of the year list. We'll see. I have to, play some more things to finalize that. But,
Yeah.
is this a game that you feel like will be in your top 10 games of the year? Do you think it will not be? Like, what are your thoughts generally on it?
I really like it, and if I'm being completely honest, I have 0 clue what I played this year as far as timeline goes, so
Right.
I'm not sure what's gonna be on my list until I sit down to look at what released and what I played. So I honestly, I was thinking about it the other day. I was like, what t what ga and when I was on, you don't even know what game it was I was thinking of. I was like, "Did this game come out this year? Did it come out last year? When did I start playing it?" So, I'm not sure. I could see it on my top 10 for sure. I don't know um, that I have 10 games better than it that I played this year.
Right. Yeah, I was kind of doing a similar thing as I spent so much time this year playing other things to try to, do my favorite video games of all time. I'm like, man, I really have not played too many games that came out this
Yeah.
year. Even though I talked about before, I've bought a lot of them. I just haven't necessarily played them
Right,
yet.
right, yes.
So,
Yeah, Stellar
okay.
Blade not gonna make your list, huh?
I mean, we'll see. It depends. Once I get done with this dissertation defense, maybe then I'll have all the time in the world and I'll stop caring and then I'll just play video games for 2 months. Who knows?
Yeah.
Um, but speaking of games that did come out this year, though, that I have played, well, I guess they kind of came out this year. First thing is the Silent Hill 2 remake
Yeah.
from the folks over at Bloober Team who decided that apparently, and they said this in an interview that they wanted to stop making bad games, so they made Silent
Ouch.
Hill 2. Yeah, they actually said that. They're like, we're not making bad games. Silent Hill 2, playing that remake. I did play Silent Hill 2 back in the day.
Yeah.
It's been obviously quite some time. And I was on the fence about this game. I was considering this. I was also considering um the PlayStation game Until Dawn. There we
Oh,
go.
yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
they came out like right around the same time. But I already own Until Dawn, so I was like, well, I don't really want to spend all this money on a remake that apparently is
It's not
not
good.
great. So I'm glad I didn't do that because, like I said, I still have the original game that I could just play if I wanted to. So I went with Silent Hill 2 because it is a remake that apparently is great. And I will say, though I'm not super far into it, only about 3 or 4 hours, it is pretty great. They've done a really nice job with this remake. I've enjoyed my time going back to Silent Hill. Um, there are some things that I always forget that these are options in games until I start playing them. For instance, right? Like there is combat. You have your nailed board that you can like whack these demons and stuff with. But
Yeah.
sometimes you can just run away. And I forget that sometimes
Yeah.
that you're not necessarily meant to have to fight everything all the time.
I
It
think
is
Silent Hill
perfectly
2 is mostly running away if I remember when, like, the sirens and stuff go off you when you're
yeah,
running.
and basically I was like, oh, I can just run past all these things. Like I'm just gonna
Yeah.
run. Like I'm not gonna deal with fighting these. Like sometimes I just forget that in video games that you can just run. You don't have to try to fight everything, especially when the combat is uh, I think they do a good job of having it be effective, but only like reasonably effective in the sense of like, hey, if you were some random dude who just showed up in this town and like ripped the board off of a window to start fighting these things, chances are you're not going to be super stellar at it, right? You're
Right.
probably going to be okay at it at best, and he is okay at it at best. So I think that was pretty good, but just they're really like that created the sense of atmosphere. Kind of the weird, quirky things of old games of like you're like I'm going to do this puzzle. I have no idea why this is the puzzle I need to do. This makes no sense. I don't know why the record in the jukebox is broken, nor do I really know why this is the thing I need to do to progress the story, but I'm going to do it because I have to do it, and it is what it is. So I don't know. I'm enjoying it. I plan to continue playing it. I just need, this is one of those games where, for me at least, it's not like a play for 20 minutes and then call it a good. Like I need to sit down and play for a chunkier amount of time, and that just doesn't happen all that often for me. So and this is not really an elliptical game, so I'm not
Sure.
going to be playing it there. But I'm enjoying it overall. Nice job to Bloober Team. I always was very skeptical about their previous games, and I know we'll talk about this more in a bit. But I am now more interested in their future work because they, to me now at least, have shown that they can make some games that potentially I'm interested in.
Sure.
I also then picked up and played and completed the Plucky Squire.
Nice.
So this is a game I know you talked about, and was on PlayStation Plus, whatever the middle tier. I can't remember. Anyways, on one of
Yeah,
the
one of
PlayStation
those
Plus
tiers.
tiers for the last month, for the month of September. I had been really looking forward to this game. Obviously, all of the trailers and previews was very, very charming. And this, to me, I was like, oh, this does feel like an elliptical game. So once I finished Vampire Survivors, which I did finish in Platinum, this is the game I moved on to. So here's what I'll say about the Plucky Squire. The Plucky Squire is one of those games that you're like, wow, they really had a vision for this thing they wanted to do. They really had this art direction of what they wanted to accomplish. They really had this tone that they're looking to set. They really had like this sense of place that they wanted to create,
Yeah.
and they did an exceptional job of creating that place. Unfortunately, that place is not a place I wanted to spend any time in once I started playing it.
Oh, no.
Um, I can understand how this would be a great game for some people,
Yeah.
but I don't know that I have ever felt so much disconnect between like the art direction, the style, just a game like oozing what it wants to be, but then having me feel so bored while I was playing it.
Sure.
Like
I
I
can see
just
that.
yeah, and I did finish the game. I played it all the way to completion, so I did beat it, quote unquote, rolled credits if you would. But man, I just really was not having a great time at any point. And really, the only reason I finished it was because like I was on the elliptical, needed something to do. And I was like, well, this is an easy enough game that it doesn't really matter how accurate things are, how quick I am for my timing on things. For the most part, it's all just going to work out just fine. And it did. I did have a couple bugs and crashes that happened. But other than that, it was fine. This is one of those things I wouldn't encourage anyone to like highly prioritize this game. Um, if this game somehow is on my top 10 games of the year, is probably because I only played 10 games this year.
Yeah.
But like I said, I think for the having it be part of the subscription was great. Worked out perfectly. And this is what I always say about subscription games. Yeah, it's perfect for mediocre games because then you don't really feel bad about like you're like, well, I just got it. I didn't have to pay for it. It was great. So yeah, that's the Plucky Squire. Yeah, if you have PlayStation Plus, great. If not, I would not recommend purchasing it. Which hurts me to say because it's so cool what they were trying to do. It just didn't quite execute. But after I finished the Plucky Squire, I needed another game to play on my elliptical. And there's this game that came out way, way back in like 2017, 2018,
Yeah.
2019, something like that.
We own it on Xbox.
Yeah, so Battle Chasers Night War. The fine folks over at Airship Syndicate, I think this is their first game that they made, actually. And then they went on to make Darksiders Genesis, and then they did Ruined King, that League of Legends game, which is apparently pretty good. And then they, well, they tried to make Wayfinder. They did make Wayfinder. They released it. I don't know that it really went great for them. It was supposed to be like this MMO, if I recall correctly, and they basically made it into like a co-op ARPG because
Yeah.
like
And
MMO stuff.
have you seen gameplay?
I actually played. I think I could say this now. I was in like the closed
Uh,
beta, like had to like sign NDA stuff
is the
for it.
character movement like as slow as it looks like in the stuff I've been seeing?
When I played it, it wasn't that bad. Honestly, the actual playing of the game wasn't bad. What I didn't
Okay.
enjoy about it, and what I think was a challenge for an MMO, and I think also is going to change, like continue with an ARPG, like your abilities were your abilities, and that was it. Like
Ah,
nothing ever changed really. So you're like, okay, well, I'm going to do this thing, and it's kind of neat, I guess, but like nothing. It was like you were just doing the same things. You just like leveled up,
no
so you did the
progression.
same things better.
Yeah.
And again, I was only playing parts of it. Like, I didn't play it since then. It was enough where I was like, well, I'm like reasonably interested potentially in what it could be, but like they need to do some work. But what I do appreciate about their studios, I really like their art style. I do like kind of the way that they approach things, and I know it's not going to work for everyone, but I tend to enjoy really kind of how they approach their games. But a long way of saying a long time ago, Battle Chasers Night War was a game that was recommended to me. And I was like, well, yeah, I'll get around to it eventually. Well, now is when the eventually was, like whatever, 5-7 years later, finally sitting down to play this game. It is a turn-based RPG. So kind of, in that JRPG style where you have your characters who they wait, they kind of going in turn order against their enemies. You are a group of folks who are uh, out on an airship who gets shot down. And then you are now like exploring this island of where you were shot down to find some of your friends who got missed, who did not escape with you when that happened, and then trying to kind of figure out the mysteries of this island that you're on. Overall, actually, this is a pretty good JRPG. Like, it is really pretty solid. The characters are kind of moderately interesting. Like, there's a little bit of you're like, okay, the story is, I'm kind of curious as to what's going on here. The progression level is pretty speedy in the sense of like you're pretty regularly unlocking new abilities and getting equipment and like new gear, and there are both like individual skills and abilities, and then there's team skills and abilities. And there's kind of a nice little progression going on, in that each character you can kind of choose one of two paths for them to go down as far as some skill development and things like that. So overall, it's kind of a neat little game. You have this open world map that you're kind of navigating across, that you can see like where the battles are. Once you get strong enough, you can like just skip some of them if you want to, or you can choose to go in and actually fight the creatures. But then when you get to exploration areas, just kind of like any other older JRPGs, like you go from the world map down to like the specific area, and then you have like your characters have some abilities that they can use to engage combat to kind of like stun enemies early until you go into the turn-based movements of it and things like that. So overall, it's a pretty neat game. It definitely is. It's a little challenging. There was a couple times where I was like, oh gosh, okay, I just totally did not, I wasn't paying attention enough, I wasn't focused enough, and I totally died. So it's got some, there's a little bit of not just kind of blowing through things. You got to pay attention to what's going on.
Yeah.
But overall, pretty happily surprised by how much I'm enjoying this game. So this is my current workout game that I'm playing in the mornings. So
Nice.
yeah, overall, Battle Chasers Night War. I think it's on many services. It wouldn't surprise me if it's on Game Pass as well.
Might
'Cause
be.
I think it's been on PS Plus for like ever. But
It's based off an Image comic too, so if you really like the lore, there's reading out there.
yeah, I think it was only like a 9 or 10 like issue run though, wasn't it?
They did a new run for the games, but
Oh, did they?
it's
Okay.
a comic since the '90s, late '90s maybe. So
Yeah.
it's been around with Image, but yeah, they probably did one just for Night War as well.
Okay. So yeah, but like I said, kind of neat. Check it out if you have access to it. Very, very briefly, I don't talk about this too often. Obviously, we know that I'm a regular Overwatch player. Um, Overwatch for the current season brought in a new game mode that for Halloween, they always had this thing called Junkenstein's Revenge. They brought in a new version of Junkenstein's Revenge. And in this new version, rather than it being kind of a PvE uh, event like it often is, and you can still play the past PvE ones, this is a PvP event where it's still 5v5, but there's no hero switching. And you're only playing on certain styles of maps. But what's neat kind of about this is that when you pick, you select your character, and your character has their typical abilities, but then you also pick buffs that your characters get. And then between each round, you pick additional buffs
Oh,
that they get. So it might go from like, if you're playing like Reinhardt, for instance, who's, the big tank guy with his huge like shield that he has walking around with, you might have it set up where, okay, I am going to add this buff where my shield is bigger, and that when I throw fire strikes, in addition to just the damage projectile going out, like a trail of lava is left
oh
behind
wow.
it, right? Like, so, and as you're going through, the longer the game goes on, like, you're getting these more and more and more buffs. uh it's a sweet mode. It's a really cool mode. I wish this was like a regular mode that just existed in the game.
Nice.
It's a bummer that it's limited to like a small pool of heroes, because there's only a few heroes that are available in each role for it. And the thing that's most disappointing about it is I'm pretty positive like this is what the intent was for like the single player mode, was that you're
For
going to get
more.
these characters and you're going to build up all these abilities that you're going to be able to have like throughout the game.
Yeah.
And I feel like, when they scrap that, this is what they like clawed from like the remains of that experience, was like kind of creating this mode, which is like so disappointing, in the sense of I'm glad we got to experience something from it, but it's so much fun, and now we're never probably going to get like the actual thing that it was going to be, which is really disappointing. So it's a cool mode. If you ever played Overwatch, I would encourage you to jump in and at least try this mode while it's around. I don't know how much longer it's around for, probably a week or two. But it's a good time. It's really fun. The only downfall I will say is that because it feels like that these things were pulled from this in progress game that was being made or mode that was being made, and because everyone's like getting different like abilities as you go, there is no hero switching.
Okay.
And the abilities you get from, as far as I can tell, and maybe I should have read about this, but as far as I can tell, it's random what you get to pick from. They just get like each round you get like a little bit better ones that you get to pick from, but it's random. So it is very possible that if you just pick like the comp that the other team has, might just completely own the comp that you have, and there's like just not a lot you can do about it. So then you just kind of get your teeth kicked in for like the entire series of games,
Yeah.
and you're like, wow, maybe if we do this, we can try to bring it back, and it just doesn't work sometimes. So that is the only downfall of it. There are a couple times where you're like, well, this is just going to be a really rough round for us because they just have the comp that really counters us very, very well. And we really can't do much to interact with them. So this is going to be a problem. But other than that, it's a pretty good game. So game mode. So check out that in Overwatch 2. Finally, on the board game side, I did actually get one new board game played. This was a game that I had backed on Kickstarter a while ago, I guess quite a while ago at this point. And it is from designer Elizabeth Hargrave, and there's a co-designer, but I have to look it up because I can't remember off the top of my head. And Mark Wooten. And this is the game Undergrove. And Undergrove is a game where you are basically, it explores the relationship between trees and mushrooms. So you're trading nutrients with fungi to grow new trees. This is kind of like an action selection slash area majority style game, and ostensibly what you're doing is it's a kind of a tile laying game where the game starts and there's 5 tiles in the middle that are always the same, and then you kind of are able to grow your sapling and one root like in the corner of the starting game board. And the starting game board is one tile in the middle and then a tile left, right, up, and down from that, right? You get to put your sapling in one root. So your sapling is touching at the beginning 3 tiles total, but the root's just picking one. You have to pick like one tile that root is going to. On your turn, then you kind of have basically 5 actions that you can pick from. One of the actions is like putting out a carbon that you have on your player board to like take the action of like one of the mushroom tiles. So you're like, okay, if I put this carbon out, this allows me to take like 2 nitrogen and a potassium or something like that, right? One action so that's one action. Another action is you can absorb carbon from one of the tiles your roots are touching onto your sapling. Once you have absorbed 3 carbon onto it, it becomes a tree, which is nice. One action is you can put out a new sapling with a root. And if you pay a little bit extra when you do that, you can also put out a new mushroom tile, because every time you put out a sapling, it has to be connected to one of those tiles. Another action is to put out just additional roots. And then the last action is you can basically photosynthesize, which allows you to turn nitrogen into carbon and to just get some additional carbon. And then some of the mushrooms require these action tiles that you have to flip over to activate them. You can kind of reflip all of those up so that they're available to use again. So when you look at the board, if you ever go to Board Game Geek and just like look at all the stuff going on, it looks super confusing because you're like, okay, there's all of these like tiles and all the tiles that have like little edges, like rounded edges, so that this little circle sapling could fit in there, and then there's all these roots sticking out from them, and then all the tiles have different things on them. So it looks really complicated when you just look at the board. But overall, it's actually pretty straightforward once you learn it. It's pretty much just like, hey, where do you want to have your trees go? Because the different mushrooms are going to give you different resources. So which trees do you want where to get what resources do you want? Right? That's pretty much all there is to it. And then once you absorb, every time you absorb carbon, you move yourself up this track. The first person to get to the end of the track, that basically triggers end of game. So everyone gets one more turn, game ends, then you score things out. Overall, I feel like this is a pretty solid game. It definitely, to me, feels kind of like, for lack of a better word, it feels like an Elizabeth Hargrave game. In the
Sure.
sense of, if you think about Wingspan and the Fox Experiment and Mariposis, all which I've talked about on the show before, all of the games are good games that have interesting decisions to make. And the reason that the decisions are often interesting is because of the volume of things that you have to pick from, right? It's like, hey, in Wingspan, you have all of these different birds. In this game, it's like you have all of these different mushrooms, right? But then when you really start to look at it and you really start to kind of like whittle things down, you're like, okay, well, yeah, there's like all of these mushroom tiles, but most of them are going to do like one of these like number of things, right? So it's like which combination of these do I need to put together in order to kind of make the thing happen the way that I want it to? So overall, I think it's a good game. I don't think it's a great game. It's something that will definitely stay in the collection. The production value of the game is exceptional. It looks great. The components are really, really good. Everything fits in the box really nice, which probably sounds like a weird compliment, but it's an important one. Like everything just tightly fits in there, packs in there, so things don't like move around really at all. There's interesting, thoughtful decisions to make, but nothing that's like super, super complicated. It's a kind of a neat little theme that you're not going to see too often of like trees and mushrooms and all that good stuff. So overall, I enjoy it. I like it. If you have her other games, I don't know this is going to give you something drastically different than those other games. I do think something like Wingspan is a better game than this. But if you really like her previous designs and are wanting additional games by her, I think it's an easy recommend from that perspective. Like I said, the other Mark Wooten, the other designer, has also done quite a few games. So I think it's kind of interesting a little bit that they're together on this. He's best known, I think, probably for having done some work on Thunderstone Quest.
Okay.
Was kind of his other work. So otherwise, this is, I think, probably his highest ranked game on Board Game Geek, other than maybe Thunderstone Quest. But overall, solid little game. Like I said, if you like Elizabeth Hargrave's other stuff, you'll feel right at home with this. If you think her other stuff is good but not great, not mind blowing, I don't know this is the best of her design. So I think sticking with something like Wingspan, I think it'll be a good shape. So overall, though, not too bad. That is Undergrove. All right, Josh, let's talk a little bit about some very brief video game news. Like I said, we're going to flip flop these a little bit. So we'll start with the video game world. Josh, what I can say is that, with the turbulence that has existed, in the video game industry this year, one person that I think, often doesn't get thought about is like how challenging this turbulence must be and how like uncertain like CEOs must feel, right? Like,
Sure.
it's
They
it's a
must
it's a
feel
tough.
terrible.
Yeah, it's like really tough for them, very, very challenging, but, luckily, over at Microsoft, keeping in mind that Xbox has laid off over 2,500 people this year, but it's
Yeah.
okay because Satya Nadella, no big deal, just got a 63% raise, making sure that his, income will be, roughly about $80 million
It's
a year.
insane.
So, at least we know, I guess, capitalism is working like it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So Josh, here's my question. If you are, one of those 2,500 people laid off from Xbox this year,
Sure.
and I know this is specifically about Xbox, but like this could easily be applied to
Could be
PlayStation.
anybody.
Yeah, anybody except Nintendo,
But the
basically. It
story
seems
isn't
like,
about anybody though.
yeah.
Yeah. It's about this
How,
guy.
how are you? Like,
Yeah. It
I
sucks.
don't even know what to say sometimes about these things, right? Like, how do you think you feel after this? Like,
Yeah, I mean nobody deserves that much money a year, period. With the way everything is right now. Sorry, maybe not deserve. Yeah, deserves is the right word. Nobody deserves that much money in a year. And I mean that across every venue, politics, entertainment, sports. Just like, come on. Nobody can afford to live in this world because of people like this. And it's not even his fault. It's the system's fault. But that's a whole different conversation, right? But the
right,
fact that you're going to come here and give yourself that much of a pay increase when people are getting no pay increases, you're letting people go. It's gonna feel gross no matter where it's coming from. No matter if there was a boardroom with 50 people that said yes, we all think he deserves it because he did this and that. It doesn't, good for him, but it's not going to look good to anybody watching from afar because it's just, yeah, they let go all those employees. They just had this huge merger. Nothing happened. Uh, like the confidence in Microsoft is going down and this guy is getting paid more money? That
Yeah.
seems odd. I don't know. I could probably go in circles with this from feeling passionate about it to not caring to being pro Xbox to being anti Xbox. I don't know. It's
Yeah, and like I
just
said,
crappy.
this is not specifically a shot at Xbox per se, like, or Microsoft per se. This is just kind of the system, and I do think when I saw this, I kind of was just like, oh my gosh, goodness gracious, and I, on Eurogamer, which is where I kind of linked the article to it. I do think that the first comment from someone on the article is probably the thing that is most, I guess, disheartening, uh, important, I guess, in regards to this, is that the story on Eurogamer is, quote, Microsoft CEO pay raises 63% to 79 million despite devastating year for layoffs. That's what
Sure.
the article title of the article is. The first comment says, despite, no, it's because of, right? Like, that's
Sure.
why he's getting paid so much, right? Is because they laid off enough people that certain metrics were hit. I'm sure that this is all built into his performance benefits, right? That he
Right.
probably didn't specifically be like, I'm just going to pay myself more, but he probably did, along with other people, the board and everyone else, figure out ways that they were going to ensure that more money was being made, or enough money was being made, that certain benchmarks were being hit to trigger bonuses for himself and others, or mandatory raises for himself and others. And that's just the nature of business in some ways. And it's like, well, was that the best? No. Is there something I don't know the right answer, right? I don't know how you fix that per se. But I do know that it does seem like that doesn't, intuitively to me, that doesn't feel like right? Like,
No, it doesn't feel right. No. Do
so
you think, and this is probably a stupid question, I just don't know. Do you think did Sony pay for Indiana Jones or did they pay Sony to put Indiana Jones on PlayStation?
my guess is that no, my guess is that Sony did not pay them anything.
Right. So
My
they
guess is that this is because there was, I don't know if you heard, there was that rumor that people said that um Xbox is going to be slowing down Project Latitude. Is that what it's called? Their project to like bring Xbox games to Sony
Oh, okay, no,
or
I
other
didn't see that.
platforms. So there's this rumor out there that was happening,
Yeah.
that it was going to slow down, and part of it was because of the backlash that occurred because of the Indiana Jones announcement. Well,
Yeah.
a couple days after that rumor, Satya came out and was like, "Nope,
We're
we're
still doing it.
continuing to put things on."
Sure.
So I do really think it is them. I think it is their desire to expand gaming as absolutely as much as they can, and to drive that revenue in that area of their
Yeah.
business. I didn't have a chance to read the article. I saw just one headline, and so I don't know the context of this, and I hate just being like, this headline said this, so I don't know how accurate it is. But talked about how, like, Satya's pay next year is much more tied to the success of Xbox than it was this year.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter what he gets paid next year. He has enough money now to quit.
Sure, I mean, I
And be
mean,
comfortable for the rest of his life.
probably, I mean, true. Yeah. But I think, I think one of those things about money is, right, like, for almost,
You're always spending it.
well, yeah, and for most
Yeah.
people, there's, it doesn't matter how much, that it's never enough, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what the only answer is more, and that's not just for money. I mean, that's for most things, right? Like, most of us push the means that we have, whether it be financial, whatever it is, right? So I don't think that is a unique to Satya or to a
Sure.
CEO thing. I think most people do that. And um, there's this, God, I'm going to mess it up, so I don't even want to say it. But roughly, there's like the story about these authors, like back in the 80s or early 90s, about that were at this party, and it was like Kurt Vonnegut and some other people, and um, they were at a party, and they were at somewhere where someone had just released like a really like best-selling book, and it had like skyrocketed to the tops of New York Times charts, and like this person was able to buy this like fancy super nice house from it, and yada yada yada. And someone was like, hey, aren't you so sad, like, you've been writing for all these years, like, and you have you know never quite gotten to this level of success, whereas this person, this is like their first or second book, and look at all the things they're ever gonna do. Aren't you jealous? And he's like, well, no, because I have something that they'll never have. And they're like, what's that? He's like, enough, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm satisfied,
Right.
like, with where I'm at, right? And I think that's one of the things that we really struggle with, of that it seems like the only answer always is more. So that's
Yeah.
why I do think that it matters that his
Yeah. You're right.
his
That's true.
2025 is tied to it. Um, but who knows? But I do think though that's why we'll see. And Phil Spencer said it too that uh, there are we've potentially like gotten as many gamers as we're going to get. So the only way that we are going to get more money from the gamers is by ensuring that for the total number of gamers, they all have access to the things that we're doing, right? We're not going to get more gamers. Nobody who's not fewer and fewer non-gamers are becoming gamers, so you have to like monetize the ones that we have, and if that's
Right.
on a different platform, so be it. So we'll see, but it just seems real cruddy in such a turbulent industry that this stuff happens, and Microsoft a lot of times, especially in the US, gets a little bit of the flack for this more than other companies, just because since they're a US based company, I think we get more of the information typically than maybe for some of those other companies whose home headquarters are elsewhere.
Yeah.
So this is not just a them thing, but yeah, it just seems a little bit out of balance.
Yeah. Agreed.
So, Josh, why did I not become the Microsoft CEO? Look how
If
rich
it,
I could be. What was I
just
thinking?
should have thought earlier. Yeah.
Should have changed my career pathway ahead of time. All right, and then one other brief story is that Ubisoft has apparently, well, not apparently, they did, has disbanded the Prince of Persia: Last Crown team after the game did not hit the metrics they were hoping that it did that they were hoping it was going to achieve. Now, it does sound like these workers, for the most part, were moved on to other projects. So it's not that they were, you know, laid off or something like that. They just have moved on to different things, which means we're not going to be getting, it doesn't sound like, another Prince of Persia Lost Crown sequel or another game in that series, at least, though there are other Prince of Persia games in the works. Josh, what are your thoughts on this? Ubisoft has had a rough few months, delaying Assassin's Creed, rumors of them potentially looking to be bought out. Like, there's been a lot going on there. I think some workers are on strike, I think, right now at one of their studios. I mean, they just had a lot going on there. Thoughts on this news? Are you surprised at the performance? Do you Where do you think Ubisoft goes moving forward? Or if you were Yves Gaumont,
Uh,
what are you doing next to help Ubisoft be successful?
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm surprised that they won't do a sequel while they're like still supporting Skull and Bones with new content and stuff.
Sure.
But yeah, I thought the game was fine. I didn't like it enough to play through the whole thing, but I still enjoyed the time I played. And uh, yeah, that some not every game needs a sequel, so maybe we'll let this stand on its own. Maybe it's good enough to be its own thing. Or maybe they'll revisit it when they need to next year and need some money. I can see it going both ways. I don't really know what's going on with Ubisoft. Yeah, I mean, you're right. They seem to have been struggling, even though they're still putting out content every year. And I would say, I think maybe the problem is like, it seems like only half of that content is still talked about, or it's just continuation of an older game service.
Right.
But thinking back to some of the E3s where they did like rabbits and they were showing off like Assassin's Creed and Skull and Bones, like what it used to look like, and some Beyond Good and Evil, and you're getting your Just Dances, but you're getting surprises thrown in there. I don't know that, like, besides Assassin's Creed, which is really their crutch right now,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that we're seeing the big surprises we saw before. But again, I could just be forgetting.
Right.
I just know like the roller skating thing didn't pan out, and then
Mm-hmm.
they've tried a bunch of different like live service games that I feel like just failed, like, or like they gave up on real quickly. Maybe not failed, but at least failed in their eyes.
So is
Uh,
that like ball one too, right? Where you're like balls rolling around, like a marble
yeah,
one or
there's
whatever
all
too?
that. Hey, that might
Yeah.
not. Did that come out? I don't
I
know.
think it
Maybe
was like
like
out this summer, I think, or at least
I
early
think
access or
it's maybe
something.
still coming out, or
Yeah.
it came out and I didn't hear about it. But yeah, I love them as a company. I think that there's definitely been times where they've had huge years, even if the games that came out weren't for me, like Watch Dogs, I never got into,
Right.
but it's hugely beloved franchise.
Right.
Uh, why are they not pulling the trigger on a Splinter Cell? What's the worst that could happen? They put it out, and then the people who've been clamoring for it don't buy it. Well, you're still gonna get all of those other people to buy it. It'll still be as successful as a Skull and Bones, a game that you like. I just don't understand why they don't have a Splinter Cell game out. It just
Yeah,
seems silly.
I do think that I feel like I'm not gonna be able to find it. I think that there is a Splinter Cell, or there are rumors of a Splinter Cell. It might be a reboot, even, or a remake coming out in like 2026 or something like that.
Not soon enough.
So, yeah, I part of me when I first heard the story, I was like, well, is this Ubisoft doing, the old Square Enix thing of when they still had their Western studios of like Tomb Raider never meeting sales expectations, right? It's like, well, what the heck were your expectations? Like, how many do you expect it to sell? Because all three of those games sold reasonably well, but apparently not well enough for Square Enix, right? So part of me was like, well, were their expectations out of whack? I don't know. Maybe they were. The other part of me, though, says, it's very curious, and this is where I think sometimes the quote unquote hardcore gamer, the people who like gaming is a big passion for them, I think sometimes get a bit disconnected from um, the reality of what the businesses are seeing. And obviously now I'm probably going to sound like I'm backpedaling based off my previous conversations about Microsoft CEO pay. But if this game, like everyone talked about how we want new unique games, right? Like we don't want another Assassin's Creed, we don't want just another Call of Duty, we don't want just another re-release of a re-release of Horizon, right? Like we want new stuff, right? Well, here was a new thing that apparently nobody bought,
Yeah, just squashed it. Yep.
right? So you want them to do new things, everyone complains that they want new things, but then when they do new things, nobody buys them. And now obviously that's, yes, some people bought it obviously, but what do you expect, right? Like if we say this is not the thing we want the new thing, and then they make the new thing, but not enough people buy the new thing to make it successful, yeah, they're just going to keep churning out more Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, I think that's why I took the Death of Concord so hard. Is like it does feel like that. Like you're waiting and waiting for something, and this isn't even like breaking ground, but it was still something that I was like got myself attached to in a way that I hadn't in other games like that. So I mean, I get that. That's a big thing. You have to take big risks, right? You look at companies like Supergiant who like may not have ever existed if someone didn't latch onto their first game
Right.
and was like, "Oh, this is something special," or they could just be like, "No, Bastion's no good, not good. See you later," and then we never get Hades because of something like that. That's
Right.
I know that like Amy Henning is someone else who can relate to things like that, like never getting your project to see the light versus having it come out and be a huge disappointment. Um, yeah, it's a fine line, but it kind of stinks. I feel like we're uh, like four segues away from becoming Martin Scorsese talking about Marvel movies, and I don't want to get to that point.
Well, but I mean, here's the thing though, right? Like I do like Marvel movies, but I also really like other movies, like
Right?
the small little, like I
They
like
can
all the,
exist together.
yes, yeah, and that's I think the big thing of, and I'm sure there's some economic things that I'm not knowledgeable enough to understand that Prince of Persia: Lost Crown, which I think is a great game. I really really like it, and had they spent like 10% less, right? Would I have liked the game more than 10% less than I did, right?
Right.
Like where is that tipping point of like, okay, and I know they've talked about this with like budgets for like Spider-Man 2, right? Of like, okay, you see every dollar that was spent on screen, but if
For
they had
sure.
spent like 10% less, would I have enjoyed it 10% less? I
Would you
don't
have
know. Like
would you have
I just don't
known?
know, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's where I think it gets really complicated to kind of figure out. And I think games that probably would suffer more are games like Prince of Persia: Lost Crown, where it
Sure.
was like, hey, this is like really polished, great experience, like and it had it lost a little polish, it may have had a more significant impact, on people's appreciation for it. But
It could have been like those Assassin's Creed side scrollers
right, yeah, absolutely,
that
absolutely,
nobody likes,
yeah.
and they made
So
three of them.
they did because they're Assassin's Creed, right? And and then there's the reports too that we're gonna get like a 10 Assassin's Creed games in the next 5 years or
I'm really
whatever.
worried about this Assassin's Creed Animus project thing.
Yeah, well, we'll see because supposedly, the big rumor being that Shadows comes out now February, but that the Black Flag 4 remake is supposed to be the end of next year.
Ah, interesting.
So, which I mean, I love Black Flag,
Worst
so
Assassin's Creed.
or best. Maybe we'll
Or
find out
best, who
more next
knows?
month. Who knows? Who knows? Cool. All right. So final video game topic then is that hey, Xbox did a partner showcase that they had some partners come talk about their games, and then they showed trailers for them.
Yeah.
Josh, did you watch
So
the Xbox partner showcase?
I didn't.
You didn't. You didn't watch
No.
any of it.
I did. I watched it after. I watched trailers afterwards. I didn't watch
Okay.
the showcase.
Wow. And you call yourself an Xbox fan?
Yeah, a little less every day, it seems.
Oh
Yeah,
man.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
What I'm actually shocked by is I still have not downloaded Call of Duty on Game
I
Pass.
did download it.
I haven't
I
yet.
was hoping to get to it today before we recorded, but we did what I'm going to put at the end of our
Ah,
episode instead. And I
gotcha.
couldn't play that in front of my son anyway, so it just would have been
Gotcha.
for an hour
Did
before we
anything
recorded.
did for the trailers you went back and watched though? Did anything stick out to you? Anything you're excited about? Anything coming from the folks at the partners of Xbox that are coming to many places? Anything that you were excited about or stick out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sound new or unique to anyone. I think Kronos, the new down, looks very promising and interesting. I want to see more.
Yeah,
It's also a Bloober Team thing.
yeah. Since they said they're not gonna make bad games anymore, I am now interested.
Just a like a statement. They're just like, yeah, all our games are going to be good in the future.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to do. Alan Wake 2 DLC. We getting Janina. I can't pronounce her name properly ever. Guavarda. It makes me want to go back and play Alan Wake 2.
Yeah.
I really need to do that. I think Blind Fire is a brilliant idea for a shooter.
Okay.
I did then go watch a streamer stream a little bit of it to see how that actually played. It's very interesting how they play with like the use of neon lights. I really like that. Yeah, I think that's probably the only things that I found interesting in that. Oh, and
Okay.
Phasmophobia coming to consoles is pretty cool, but that's not exclusive to Xbox.
Right.
But
Yeah.
now we can maybe have some people join our PC game nights when we play.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I have to be interested in Firebreak because it's in Control. But what is it? Is it a shooter?
It's a 3-player co-op shooter multiplayer. Yeah.
Okay, so it looks interesting. I'd be curious to see more about that.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in Firebreak. What is interesting about it too is that obviously it was shown at the Xbox Partner Showcase, and it was announced for Xbox, Windows, and it's coming to Game Pass. It is also coming. It's going to also be on PlayStation Plus.
Oh, and on PlayStation Plus. That's
Yeah,
okay. That's
so
nice.
it is going to basically kind of obviously not quote unquote free to play for
Yeah,
from that. Maybe it is full free to play. I don't know, but it is both going to be on Game Pass and PlayStation Plus at launch. So that they are definitely wanting to ensure a player base, which I think is good. I think that's a good thing to do. I also am definitely interested in that game because obviously Remedy I think is pretty great. I like their games overall quite a bit. And then kind of seeing what they do there is something I'm definitely interested in. Uh, this is going to sound so. This is Wu Chang Fallen Feathers to me was like Xbox being like, well, no, Sony doesn't have all of the games that look like
yeah,
this. We have one too.
we got
So
one.
that's kind of because I do think Sony has gotten pretty hard. Like Sony for a while was like the game that like the console that like all the fighting games were on, and now I feel like it's a console that's like all the Souls like games, but especially like the Asian looking Souls like games, like ours. We're taking all of them. And I kind of felt like this was like Xbox being like, but we got this one too.
But that's
Uh,
505 games, so it's gonna not be truly like a Western game coming over.
and yeah, I mean,
You got 505 doing it.
yeah, and 505 games they often, I mean, there often is a very cozy relationship there with Xbox. The Legend of Babu, that dog looks cute, so that's neat. I like dogs. Dogs in games are good. Wheel World, I'm kind of interested in because this was originally called Ghost Bikes, and Ghost Bikes
Yeah.
are actually a thing in the world that exist. So it's kind of
Prove
interesting.
it.
Well, in the sense, so if I recall correctly, Ghost Bikes are memorials put to cyclists who died
Oh,
while riding.
okay.
So
All
yes,
right. I
like
thought
the
you were talking
idea of a
about
ghost bike
ghost
is yeah,
spikes.
yeah, no, yeah.
Okay, I get you.
So, but so the change is interesting. I'm guessing that means there must have been some sort of shift of tone or like what they were trying to do with the game would be my guess. And it kind of looks like it from the original trailer, but obviously anything bike related, I'm always typically pretty interested in. So we'll be checking that out because that looks pretty neat. But otherwise, overall, yeah, I thought it was. I feel like I'm a broken record when it comes to these showcases. It was fine, right? There was some stuff
It
that I
was
was like, oh,
fine.
that's neat. There's some stuff that I'm like, that's not for me, and it was fine. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Cool. All right. Well, hey, let's move on then. We'll move on to talking a little bit briefly about one kind of quote unquote piece of board game news, and then we'll talk about our top 10 list. But not to be outdone, we talked a couple months ago about how that one place, Gen Con, that's the one, how Gen Con had sold out in 2024. Well,
Yeah,
Essen said, hey, hold my German beer. As Essen sells out for the first time ever. With 204,000 attendees. Now,
yeah,
this is not a record for the number of people who've attended Essen Spiel. The highest number of people who've ever attended is 209,000. But because of some reconfiguring and how they've done things, this is kind of like the max that they can hit these days. So this is the first time it's ever actually officially sold out. So 204,000 people attended the Essen Spiel. That's a lot of people, Josh.
yeah. That's a
That's
lot of people.
that is so many people. And I just think it is interesting when you compare, Gen Con selling out at like 70 some thousand to now SN being at over 200. Things are just a bit different there as far as that goes. What I will say, I don't know. I have this like romantic idea of like one day going to Essen and being there and like goggling around and like buying the games and seeing all the newest, latest, best stuff that gets announced there, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like that way about Gen Con sometimes too. But then I look at the pictures and I'm like, do I actually want to be in that? Like, that's
Yeah.
so many people. I mean, that is just ridiculous. Josh, I mean, is that something that, I mean, I know you've gone to, PAX Unplugged and things like
Yeah.
that. Like, obviously, those are smaller than this. Would you ever want to go to a game show this big?
Not no, not particularly. I did watch all the Dice Tower videos. I didn't know that it was so big that it's in multiple halls that
Yeah,
are separated from by buildings, which I actually think is good. That gives you space to get out, walk, and that creates open spaces in halls, but also leaves potential for one hall to be overly crowded, which I also saw in one of the videos. They couldn't even walk; they were like shoulder to shoulder, stuck.
right.
So there's definitely pros and cons to it. At PAX Unplugged, I think it was like the perfect amount of people, however many people that was, like maybe 20 to 30,000, maybe.
Uh huh.
Um, that felt nice for the space that they had in other rooms. I never felt too crowded, but I also did feel crowded. You know what I mean? Like to points where you're like, okay, this is too much, but I had somewhere I could go for it to be, to get away from that. I feel like at Essen, like every video I've seen, if I, it happens if I'm out with my wife anywhere, I get frustrated if I'm like in a like tight quarters in a group and she'll look at me like knowing, and I'll be like, yeah, I'm going to be outside or something. So you can't do that in like there, at least not
Right.
quickly.
Yeah.
So that would, it's not even like an anxiety thing for me. It's just like a need to be away from that space. And I need that option. So that might be a problem with Essen for me. Even Gen Con, I've hearing how crazy it is there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, although being in the at the stadium afterwards might make it a little easier space wise, but uh, I would still go if I had the opportunity. I wouldn't. I don't want to go to Germany to buy games though to bring back. That's
I
another
know,
kind of
right? Oh man.
bummer. I don't
um.
have Dice Tower money where I can ship it all back. Uh,
Right.
and have that be okay.
Yeah.
So it would have to be close by, like PAX Unplugged.
Yeah. I do think it. How they set up SN also is really interesting because like you mentioned how they have those separate halls, but those separate halls are set up like one is like a hall for like children's games, one is for like family and light to medium games, and there's like an expert game. Like so, I gotta imagine that for some publishers that's probably really awkward to be like, well, what hall are we going to be in? Because like
Right.
especially if they like span, kind of the gamut. Though most publishers do have like a specialization or a majority of what their games are, but um yeah, that just seems really interesting because like I would have to imagine like if I were like I would probably never go to like the children's game like what, right, like why would I ever go there, right? So
Yeah.
but I think it probably might help with crowd sizes and things like that, and ensuring that the bigger halls are the ones that have where they feel the most interest is going to be as far as when you get to like the expert games, kind of the tabletop stuff, all that neat stuff. But yeah, no, I also watched the Dice Tower coverage. They always do a really good job of all of their travel vlogs and just their live
Yeah.
streams. Like they do a pretty nice job there, and yeah, it's man, just there's a lot of people. There's so many people. All right, Josh. Well, hey, this is it. We've talked about it for quite some time. In this month's episode, we were going to do our top 10 board games of all time.
Yeah.
Um, I have my list ready. Do you have your list ready?
I do.
Okay, so here's my first question before we actually jump into talking about our favorite board games, Josh. Uh, what was the process like for you? How did you decide like where to start? Like how did you get down? And like when you got down to 10, was it like a solid 10, or were you like, well, I had like 13 and I had to like pick 10? Like kind of where did we end up at?
Yeah, my list is more than 10, so I definitely didn't land at 10. But what I did was I just wanted to write down everything that came to mind as my favorite game and just write it down first. Uh, and then, and still now, was the worry of what did I forget? So my top 10 in my mind when I wrote it is my top 10, but it's not my definitive top 10 because you're probably going to say a game in your bottom five that might be in my top or bottom five that I forgot. And I can at least add, if you say it in your
Right.
bottom five, I can add it in if I haven't said it yet, but that's another worry. I mean, it's not like whatever. It's silly thing like board games, but once you put all time, it becomes a thing,
It does. It
And
does.
uh, yeah, I think we talked about it before. Like you were like Tom's like changes every year, so like ours can change too. That doesn't mean that it can't change, but it's certainly um, I'm worried about the perception of what kind of a board gamer I am will come out of my list.
Yeah.
I was worried about that. So I was worried, and I'll be honest, I was like, I'm going to come across as like the most basic board gamer. But I'm okay with it because, like, sincerely, the games on my list are my favorite games. And it just happens that a lot of them are very well known and mass published board games.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
It's not like I'm not putting Monopoly or Clue on here, but it certainly isn't. I'm not breaking ground. Like I went and Googled top 50 BGG games of all time, and I played two of those games,
Oh,
and I
wow.
was like,
Okay.
and they're all war or heavy Euro games, and I'm like, okay, where are any games I've played?
Gotcha.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So I was out of touch on that, but then I went to the top 50 most played games, and I was like, oh yeah, I have all of these games.
Okay. Okay.
So I was, but I'm not trying to come across as like a board game snob kind of person either. So like, I feel like I was like thinking about like comparing it to like having to rate beers
Okay.
and like the beer snob aspect of it. So like, I have like a bunch of Coors Lights and Miller Lights on my board game list, and no like like Treehouse beers or Elysium or whatever people drink outside of Massachusetts.
Sure.
Uh, so I don't know. We'll see where it goes. But how about you? What was your process like?
Well, because what I did is I just I looked at all the games in my collection, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Yep, this might be on the list. Yep, this might be on the list." And then I just started like kind of like whittling things down from there. And then once I was done with that, I did go and like look at a list on Board Game Geek just to see if I had missed anything that maybe if there was a game that I didn't own or anything like that. Um, so that's kind of like the list I started with. When I was done, it was basically like 13 that were like kind of vying for the top 10 spots. So there's really kind of three games that are going to be kind of left out, if you would per se. One I almost included more as like a novelty than I was like, man, I mean, is this really my number 10? But I kind of wanted to just from a novelty perspective. Maybe I'll change it and put it in, but the other game that's in here I really
Was it
like.
Win,
So
Lose, or Banana?
it is not. It is
No,
not.
that's too bad.
But I will say, that's interesting that you said that though, Josh, because I went and looked. The highest, like I have no game in my. So if you go from like the overall rank from the Board Game Geek, like top, 100, and then
Yeah.
just continuing it down from there, my highest ranked game, or the game that's ranked the furthest down the list, I should say, um, is still in the top 500. Um,
Oh,
yeah. So my overall, like the one that's lowest down my list, is still in the top 500. Though the one of the games that I was like, that's in my like three first outs is like it's like 3,000 something, 4,000 something. It's like way up there. Um, but I don't really. I would be very curious now, because you're talking about how your games are all like, you know high play games. Like all my games I think that are on my list are games that, at least for hobby board game people, like all of these are games that like are well known and play by hobby board gamers. So I don't think any of them are like really deep pulls from that perspective. And a few of them I think are some really really liked games, games by hobbyists. But I would say that most of these probably are not known by like, most of these some of these you can find like in Target, but most of them you cannot. um or Barnes and Noble or something like that. But some
sure. I
a
got
good
you.
some of them you definitely can, for sure.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I don't know, we'll see. I'm really curious what your list is now.
Sure. I mean, yeah.
Do you want to do your honorable mentions first or at the end?
I don't mind doing them first if you want.
um I mean,
We could do them at the end too. I'm
let's do them at the end. We'll do them at the end.
okay.
Okay, Josh.
So, then why did you even ask, Kyle?
Because yeah. Okay. Honorable mentions at the end. So we'll
Yeah.
start, Josh. What is your number 10 favorite board game of all time?
My number 10
Oh, actually,
is,
really quick. Sorry. Before you
yeah,
do
yeah,
this,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
do you know, and
Get
if you
on
don't
me.
know, that's fine. Do you know what the oldest game on your list is?
Let's
Or like the
see.
year your oldest game came out?
Let me check. Yeah, I think so. Oh wait, no, that one just came off my list. I was just about to put in the game that's not on my list anymore. The oldest game on my list is from release date. Oh god, that's not going to get me what I want. 2008.
Okay. What is the newest game on your list?
Of all time, probably 2017, maybe.
Okay. Because my oldest one is 2011. My newest one is 2021.
Okay.
So
Yeah. Well,
I have a 10-year span basically, that all the games, and honestly for like everything else that was on my list too, like I think they were basically all in that time frame.
okay.
So
2017 was the other one I was thinking. So I was pretty. I said 17, 18. Yeah. So I guessed it right.
okay, cool. With that knowledge, then Josh, what is your
Yeah.
number 10?
Well, my number 10 is Ascension. I
Really, all
wanted.
the way down at number 10?
I know. This is that thing about how often am I playing it versus
Yeah,
how much do I like it. I like it so much that it is not my number 10. I have played it so infrequently, it should have probably been in my top 25.
gotcha.
But I wanted a deck builder in my top 10, and this is still, like, we talk about this in the past, like, if you're depending on who you played with, when you played it, and what group you played with, either Dominion or Ascension is your first deck builder, most likely, if you're in the hobby. And some people, and I don't blame anyone who picks Dominion over Ascension as like their favorite deck builder, but Ascension is mine. And I think it probably always will be, unless something comes out to dethrone it. It's just it's easy to play. There's more going on behind this, like than more than meets the eye, so to speak. Um, and it's just fun. It's just a really fun, chill kind of game. You can sit down, you can have conversations, you can like hang out, you can make it a 3 or 4 player game if people are feeling uh silly. Sorry, I gotta watch my cat because she turned my power off on my computer last night
Oh goodness gracious.
while we were playing. Um, so yeah, I just kind of I really like the iterations it's gone through, the different art styles. I think what makes it more complicated is having all those different art style changes and expansions and stuff. But I still think if you go out and buy like Ascension Anniversary Edition, any of the ones that they sell, you can just open it up and play out of the box, and it's fun. It will always be fun, and you can always add more cards. I do miss though, like when I was really into it, there was this really fun like chase of these cards they were releasing,
Uh-huh.
like special sets like the Leprechaun set and these things that you'd have to get on their site, and there'd only be so many. I really miss kind of stuff like that. This is like pre Kickstarter. Now
Right.
that's all handled by Kickstarter. But it kind of added to the chase a little bit, made it feel like a CCG instead. Uh, but yeah, Ascension. Easy for me to put on my list. I just didn't know uh, where it was going to be.
So when you think of Ascension, do you think of just the base game? Or do you think of like, because I mean there's been so many expansions
Yeah.
and additions and like expandalones, like there's so much within the Ascension universe. So when you think of it, like what specifically are you including all of that or
I mean, I would just no. I would say the base game is where
okay.
I would what I would put. That was the how I was introduced to it. At the first PAX East ever is when I played it. So whatever year that was, maybe that's my oldest game on my list. Uh, and that was one of those things where I liked it so much. I was like, where can I get more of this? And they didn't
Right.
have the expansions out yet. It was just the base game. So there was like a couple promos and that was it. And that was still enough for me. We played the crap out of that game. And then when those expansions started coming out, there's still good ones, but there's also bad ones. Like Legendary has a lot of bad expansions,
Yeah.
and I would argue Ascension. The thing that bugs me with Ascension is they like 5 expansions in, they started creating. I think it was like Dream Walker ones or the Dreamscapes, where they had cards that only worked with that mechanic, so you couldn't just as easily put them into your game because if you're adding it in with all the other expansions, the chances of you pulling those cards to work with that specific mechanic never come. They're very few and far between, so it was less fun. So base game, I think, still is the winner as far as that goes. If I had to pick like one expansion, I think Into the Void is the best one. That's like I think they're second or third.
Well, and what's kind of, and this is what gets really hard with Ascension too, is that, in looking at Board Game Geek, there's like the expansions and then there's the versions, but then there's also like the integrates with category. And that's where you get like the kind of like the expand load like one. So like in integrates with, there's 20 items and it's like Ascension Return of the Fallen, Ascension Storm of Souls, Ascension Immortal Heroes, Ascension Rise of the Vigil, Ascension Darkness Unleashed, Ascension Realms Unraveled, Ascension Dawn of Champions,
Yeah,
Ascension Year 2 Collector's Edition, Ascension Dreamscape, Ascension X War of Shadows. I don't even know what that is. Ascension Year 3 Collector's Edition, Gift of the Elements, Valley of the. I mean, there's just so much stuff. Like,
yeah,
and I know that's all like, there are so many games that are that way. Absolutely. Um, yeah, and I know you love Ascension, and I really enjoy it too. It was a fun deck builder. I've always enjoyed my time with it. It just was one of those games that I felt like I could just never keep up.
yeah. Same.
So awesome. All right, so Josh's number 10, Ascension. All right, Josh, my number 10. So, yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like that's a gamer's game that you just named right there. That's totally a gamer's game.
Sure. Yeah, that's one of them.
All right. So my number 10, it kind of surprised me actually that it's on this list. But my number 10 is actually the oldest game on my list as well. Came out in 2011, and that is Trajan or Trajan, depending on who you talk to. Designed by Stefan Feld. This is very much a Euro that has a lot of area management. But what's really kind of interesting about this game is that the way that you choose your actions is through a Mancala system. So there's a Mancala on the board that you like pick up like the different colored pieces that you want, and then you kind of place them, like play Mancala with them, and then where you end up is like the action that you take. And this was my first introduction to Stefan Feld games. And the kind of quote unquote idea of a point salad where you get points for literally doing everything. But it also was kind of one of the more first heavier Euros that I played at this time. There was a couple other that I played as well, but there was just so much decisions and thought it packed into what is overall a pretty little box that ends up then becoming this really, really large board, that I just was really quite smitten with, kind of all the thinkingness that I had to do and everything that you had to consider, and how you had to decide between like, well, if I do this action, I get this many points. If I do this action, I get this many, because you're getting points for everything. So it's like, what is the right number of points to get now? And is it better to do this thing that's less points now? Because that means I can do this other thing later that's more points. But if I do this thing that's middle points now, I can only get the middle points thing next time. Like there's so much thought that goes into it. And the other thing that I appreciate about it, and I know there's a new version of it, but the edition I have, that game is ugly.
Oh
It
yeah.
is not pretty looking. It is like the definition of a beige like worker placement game. But it is one thing, and I there's definitely some nostalgia, quote unquote, here of when I think about like when I played this game. It was when I was getting really, really into board games, and just I could still remember the nights of like ordering food together, sitting down, playing this game, half of us not knowing what the heck we were doing or how to do it, and it's something that over time we gradually just got better and better and better at. So yeah, I really enjoy it. I think that it is a pretty well loved game overall. Like I think people really do enjoy it. I don't know that when it comes to Stefan Feld, I think most people would put like Castles of Burgundy above this as far as like his best game at least. But for me personally, Trajan or Trajan is always going to kind of be my favorite Feld, barring his new one that just came out. What's that one called? Uh, Shoot, he has a city builder. He has a Euro worker placement game that just was at Essen. But anyway, I can't remember it. But no, it's man, Civolution. That's the one. Civolution.
Civolution.
But yeah, so overall, I like Stefan Feld as a designer, and Trajan is really kind of what helped me fall in love with Euros. So that's my number 10, Trajan.
Nice.
Josh, what is your number 9, sir?
My number 9 is maybe the newest game on my list. And that's Unmatched.
Ooh, okay. I thought this would be higher. Okay.
I really love this game. It's lower on my list because I'm trying to also think about how often I get to play it and how many people I can play. I also, spoilers for the rest of my list, I left off the dual games where I left off a bunch of 2-player games I really considered putting on here.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. This is a 2-player game though.
Yeah.
So, and it works best when it's a 2-player game. I know there's options to make it 4 players, and then we tried playing Unmatched Adventures. It wasn't a big hit, which really has me on the fence of getting that Kickstarter for the TMNT Unmatched one, but it's expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, Unmatched, again, it's a simple board, right? Simple looking game. The first thing for me that even got me the attention of this game was the art style, that Mondo art style. I love it so much. And then the figures, they do just a great job, not only just on the minis, but also the cards. Just art is fantastic. The design is so, the production is so good on this. So that's a huge part of it. But really, like, the possibilities, and this would be with all of, like, I'm including Unmatched as like all of the characters that are out.
Okay, because I was going to ask,
because there are base games that you can get, and then there's expansion characters. But that's the beauty of it, right? Like we talk about other game that does this, and the amount of time and effort that has to go into working and workshopping these characters with all the other characters in your game to make sure it's not broken. This isn't like Magic; they're not issuing erratas on these cards. Like these have to be forever cards, unless they're going to ship you like, here's our fix to Medusa. We made her too strong against the T Rex.
Right.
Like, there's just like it's comical, the pairings that you can have, the fact that Sherlock Holmes is Shakespeare is a character you can play as and could fight Dracula with Shakespeare really is kind of silly and funny, but
Right.
not like something you wouldn't see in like a pulp comic or a late 60s movie or something. So I really enjoy it, and it's challenging, and it's outwitting your opponent with what you can do via deck uh, manipulation, deck playing. So I just love it so much. It could be higher on my list, but this is of all time, and I was trying to not let recency bias take over my list.
No, I think recency bias is fine.
Don't
Uh,
worry, it's on here more.
um, would you consider Tales to Amaze like to be part of this?
I would say you could consider it, but it is essentially a campaign game. So while while the good news is that we might not love the adventures game, those characters have full unmatched decks and minis that we could just play within the game. So I'm not losing those,
Right.
which is nice. So at least I'm getting 4 characters out of it, but there are bosses and stuff in there that I think they may have made like decks you can print to
Oh,
use
okay.
those as characters as well, which is nice. But yeah, I don't consider it, but you could, only because I don't love it, but you could consider it the same thing.
Yeah. I did have a few moments of, if there are times like where I want to include a quote unquote system, right? Like the unmatched system as a whole,
Yes.
or legendary, the system of legendary as a
Yeah, like
whole,
the
because it's,
crossroads thing.
yeah, because it's just like, how do you, right? In this case, like people love unmatched, but how do you be like, this is the unmatched game
There isn't
specifically
a
I'm talking,
version,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. So awesome. But hey, I assumed, I thought this might be on your list. I was, along with Ascension, I was just curious where they would be. But the fact that these are your 10 and 9, I'm super curious what's above this. So I
I'm
have some ideas,
evolving
but
as a
we'll see.
gamer.
Um, my number 9 is quite different than my number 10. And I went from what is my oldest game to what is now one of the newest games on my list. Came out in 2021. I also went from what is an extremely heavy game to what is an extremely light, approachable game.
Okay.
And this is a game I know you enjoy. I don't know if this is going to be on your list or not, but this is Cascadia.
Oh wow, and your top 10 games of all time.
Yeah,
All right, nice.
I really do enjoy Cascadia. I think there's something about this puzzle, kind of tile laying, a little bit of like kind of drafting. It incorporates a few different things that I like, right? Like you're both being thoughtful about like the pieces that you're picking, you're being thoughtful about how you choose to kind of build things out. And it's, a game that is super, super simple to teach, not very complicated at all, but still has, and I think you're gonna see this. I have discovered I really like kind of two things. I like really crunchy, heavy games, but then I also like games that are really simple designs that give you a lot of different options that are highly, highly replayable, right? And I feel like that's kind of my two things that I'm a sucker for, and Cascadia will just be the first example of that on this list. But I think too, with the expansions that have come out for it, it really just adds some great additional and new ways to play the game. And that it just is something that I just really have enjoyed my time with. And I'm surprised at how much I like it. When I was like looking at, and I had written down all the games that might be on there, Cascadia actually I kind of just like tossed on. I was like, whatever, sure, Cascadia. I like that game. And then everything as I was matching it up against games, I was like, nah, I think I'd rather play Cascadia, right? Like, so that's kind of like what I was doing. And it just, in some ways, it surprised myself about how high this game climbed up the list, and how much I enjoy playing it. So I am always down to play it. And I know the roll and write games are not, I'm not including in this per se, but even just the ability to meaningfully take this kind of design and this process and put it into those roll and writes too is for me impressive. So yeah, this is a game that I think will be in my collection for a long time. It's something that I can easily introduce to other people. And I from a theme standpoint, like I like the fact of like looking at nice animals. That's kind of neat. But it's high replayability, easy to teach, pretty quick game as well. So for me, it's just that nice balancing between like having something super super crunchy and then having this kind of quote unquote breezy game, but it still has meaningful decisions to make. So I'm surprised in some ways that it's on my list. I didn't think it would be. But yeah, here it is at number 9. Cascadia, which is definitely a darling. And this is where like sometimes Josh, you talked about how you feel like, oh, and I should have done this with my first game too. That you're like, oh, the games I was looking at weren't super super high like on Board Game Geek lists. Trajan was overall was 129. But like Cascadia on the top 100 is number 48. So
Wow.
I'm like, well, I guess maybe I am just the person who's a sucker for like the, quote unquote board game hobbyist
No, you got it right
games.
behind me. I'm
Yeah.
with you.
So yeah, but yeah, so that's my number 9 is Cascadia. All right, Josh, what is your number 8, sir?
Well, my number 8 is not too different from my number 9. It's Villainous. Another what I would consider just a incredibly well designed board game series. If I had to pick one, it would be Disney Villainous would be the one I would pick. And they also have a thing, like, in my opinion, there's certainly winners and losers in the expansion sets they have, but I don't think any of them are bad uh, when you play them with the base game. So there's so many different character variations. And again, this is a system where they have to balance these characters out to work. I don't love when they say like, "Hey, you can also play like Star Wars with your Disney Villainous," and I'm like, "Sure," but there's like vehicles and the
Right.
Star Wars one, so it's not as easy to do that. But I just again, I love the design. I love the art. The art is a really big one for me. They did such a good job on um, not just copy pasting pictures from the movies and things. They may still do that, but there's still a lot of fresh art in these. And turning the tables, like playing as the bad guy, doing bad guy things, trying to kill Peter Pan. You know, silly things like that you don't get to do in every type of board game. And I love how many people can play. Technically, you could probably play a ton of people, but uh, I think it's a little long if you're playing more than 3 people. So I don't love that about it. But I think if you know what you're signing up for, that could be a really fun evening if you're going to get 6 people together to play a 4-hour game of Villainous.
Right.
Can still be fun. Again, another thing I love about it, like I love about Ascension and even Unmatched, is it's a very social game. There's a lot of talking. You can still be social and chat, catch up, or trash talk. Like there's a lot of room for that. And it doesn't take itself too seriously. So I enjoy that as well.
So, Josh, I am surprised that
You thought it'd be
your first.
higher?
Well, no, not necessarily. But I'm curious if this will continue for you. That your first 3 games are all games that there's a whole bunch of stuff for them.
Yeah, that is interesting. Huh?
Yeah, like there are many expansions, like many base boxes plus things that you can do. That these are games that like I don't want to say they're quote unquote lifestyle games,
Yeah,
but they are definitely games that um, are much more are not just like, hey, here's this one game and then you're good to go. Obviously, for mine so far, Cascadia has like 2 expansions,
yeah.
but Trajan didn't have any, and now that when I look at the rest of mine, nah, okay, a number of them have expansions moving forward. So okay, cool. All right, Villains. I think I might like this game more if I got to play it with a group that actually actively played the game, kind of how you're supposed to. In the sense of anytime I've ever played this game, like no one was willing to be mean. And I'm like, you're playing
Really?
a
Oh
villain.
no, no, take that at all. Yeah,
Yeah, like you are playing as a villain. You have to stick it to the other people at least a little bit.
yeah,
Otherwise, we're just all gonna sit here and look at each other. Like, what you gotta do
yeah.
something. Well, I don't want to get mad. That is
Oh, good luck. I hope you get him.
right. Like I just so that's my only knock on the game is, and I think obviously game groups can matter for every game, but I have not yet experienced this with, I think, the right game group for me to like it more
Well,
than
if
you.
you're ever in the area, I have a very competitive game group you can come and
Perfect.
play with.
All right, so that's Josh's number 8, Villainous. My number 8 is a bit of an older game. It came out back in 2014, so not super old, but a little bit older, from a very storied designer, and that is one Bruno Catala. This game has multiple versions of it. They had to kind of reprint it after maybe some I will just say mistakes, maybe as far as considerations about what people might think of certain words and roles in the game.
Okay.
Um,
Interesting.
and that game is Five Tribes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the new versions don't have slaves in them anymore.
Sure. I mean, I get it.
Yeah, right. It's cool. So, but this is a kind of an auction bidding game, but also a kind of like worker placement y sort of game. But again, actually, I realized as I was thinking about this, kind of with a Mancala like element to it, similar to Drejan, in the sense of like you have a board that is different locations, and that board, and since they're tiles, is different every time you put it out. And then you put out these different colored meeples, and in order to quote unquote take a certain action, you pick up all of the meeples of that color on one board, and then you move them around to the different boards, like dropping one meeple off as you go, and in the end, kind of however many, if the board that you end on with your last meeple, however many meeples of that color are on that board, like that's how many times you get to like do that action, right? So it is one that can cause a bit of analysis paralysis with people, because you can't really plan too far ahead, because you have to wait and see how everyone else moves things to know like kind of what options are available to you. So that is one drawback of it, definitely. But I do think that there's definitely some neat ways to approach it. There are different strategies that I think overall are equally viable, of like the different meeples and the abilities that they have are all pretty um equal, in the sense of like if you go like the yellow meeple route, like that is as good of a path to victory as if you go like the red meeple route or the blue meeple route, and things like that, as far as the actions that they allow you to do. You get to buy these powerful djinns that have these abilities that are pretty make pretty significant changes to the game. You're kind of also always regularly wondering, oh, do I need to buy these djinns and things like that. So yeah, I think again a game that is a little crunchy. I think definitely, obviously, the middle of the 3 games that I've had so far, this is the middle as far as difficulty goes. But again, because of the variable setup, because of the way that the meeples are going to be different every time you're going out, how you approach the game each time is going to be slightly different. So this is just a game that every time I've introduced it to people, there's always the first couple rounds of being like, I don't really understand like how this works or what we're supposed to do. But then as you kind of continue to play, you're like, oh, okay, this starts to make more sense. And then even you're being thoughtful about where am I picking my meeples up from? What colors specifically am I dropping off on different ones to limit the number of options other people would have if they were to go there? And it kind of starts to layer all these decisions, as you're going. So again, just a number of thoughtful decisions. Again, I guess just to show how much of a mainstream like hobby board gamist I am. This is number 82 overall on the Board Game Geek Talk 100. So again, I'm not like I am right in the wheelhouse of many people there, but I really enjoy the game. It's a game that we still regularly play, multiple times a year, and I don't have a ton of games that we can say that about, but that's Five Tribes.
Nice.
All right, Josh, what is your number 7, sir?
My number 7 is Seven Wonders, as it were.
Did you do that on purpose?
No, I did not. My cat's attacking me. Sorry. I guess she was hungry. Um, no, it was not done on purpose. I actually swapped it with Unmatched. Originally, it was at
Okay.
my number 9 spot. But Seven Wonders, yeah. I mean, we talked about this so much. It's one of those games that if you're like, if I'm over at my friend's house and we're like, hey, whatever we can do fell through. What should we play? Like, there's like 3 games that we would like look at and be like, yeah, we can certainly always play that. One of them is Villainous, or one of them is Seven Wonders. And it's because it's fun every time you play it. It's easy to pick up and remember, and it's just, yeah, and that's kind of it, right? Like, you have a goal, you get to decide how you want to meet that goal, and um, you do your best to screw over the people that are next to you. All in a fun way. Like I love that thing where it's like 3 turns in and you're like, oh shoot, like this person on my right is building up their military. I wasn't even paying attention.
Right.
So now you decide, like, is it even worth me getting into military in this game? How, what about the person on my left? Am I going to be taking, double damage every, like, just the challenge of having to change your initial strategy, and that's different every time you play it. So um, I love Seven Wonders. I'm really happy that we have this new updated art version.
Hmm.
I don't love the expansions. Um,
You don't like any of them?
I don't love them. I
Okay.
like leaders just fine. I like cities just fine. I
Yeah.
haven't played Armada yet. Um, so they're fine, but I like the base game so much as it is that I don't necessarily need them, which is probably
Right.
why I'm just like lukewarm on them.
Yeah.
None of them make it so good that I have to always play with it.
Mm-hmm,
Like
hmm.
it doesn't change the game to be better, in my opinion.
Right.
Just different.
Sure. I do appreciate anytime games like add something that like gives like variable player powers and things like that. So
Yeah,
I do appreciate them, but you are right. I would never there. I don't have to play with any of the expansions. Right. There are
right.
sometimes where there are some games where you're like, oh, I really like. Nope. I will play base seven wonders whenever somebody wants to play base seven wonders. Absolutely. I will say this just barely did not make my list. It was very
Oh,
close. And Josh, just so you know that you are a hobby board gamist because this is number 95 overall on the Board Game Geek Top
yeah.
100. So there you go. Look at
Sure.
you.
Yeah.
Awesome. The only thing I don't like about Seven Wonders is it's kind of this weird thing of like something I like leads to something I don't like. I like the fact that they're big cards. I hate the fact though that by the end of age 3, like you have
So
there's
many
so many
cards.
cards just like laid out
Yeah.
everywhere, and it takes like so much space on the table that you're like, goodness
Yeah.
gracious. But yeah, so the thing I like leads to the thing I don't like. Awesome. All right, so that's Josh's number 7, Seven Wonders. My number 7 is a game I've definitely talked about multiple times on this. It is a game that for a long time would have been considered my favorite game of all time, and that is Dead of Winter. So Dead of Winter
Oh,
is my number 7. Part of the reason
Kyle, this is shocking.
yeah, so part of the reason that this game dropped this much is I don't play it all that often anymore.
Yeah.
And when I do play it, it is it's a little fiddly. There is some parts of the game that I think that since it has the potential for there is maybe a hidden trader, but you don't know, right? Because there isn't guaranteed to be one.
Yeah.
Um, I- this game, I think, for those hidden trader games, has the biggest potential of someone just absolutely tanking the game for other people. And I haven't really had or experienced that too much, but I know that for some people that's a huge concern with the game and why the game is the way it is. But I do think from a thematic standpoint, from an approach standpoint of mechanisms fitting well with the game, I think it makes a ton of sense. I think the ideas of like searching but then making noise and how you do it. I think the characters and the variable powers that they have are really interesting. There's a dog character, so how can I not love that? So it's not enough for me to like push it off as like not a game that I off my top 10 by any means. I also think that transparent, like this game is not a great 2-player game by any means, right? Like this is
Yeah.
a game that needs, I think, 4, I think is ideal for it. And that's just something that doesn't happen very often. And I think if I would be super interested in like in a new version of this game to see if they can streamline it a bit. But I don't know if that will ever happen with Plaid Hat or anything like that. But overall, I still really like this game. I know for a lot of people it's fallen off pretty considerably, and probably much more than it has for me. It is a absolute table hog. Like it takes up so much space on the table. The standees now, I'm sure if they ever re-release this, would all be miniatures, and this thing would cost like
Yeah.
$250. But I still really like it. I think as a kind of a mere trash game, it is pretty weighty. It is pretty thinky. There's a lot of decisions you need to make. It introduced the crossroads system, which I absolutely love. I really enjoy the crossroads system, so I like that there. But yeah, it just has fallen for me a bit. I just don't get to play it as much as I used to, and even when I have been able to get back to the table, it just doesn't quite stick as much as it used to. I think there's just games that do similar things better now.
Yeah.
But I think a little bit because of nostalgia, really enjoy it. And I mean, even on the Board Game Geek Top 100, it's not even. I mean, it's now number 227. So it's not like it's
Ouch.
fallen like way off the, considering how many there are, but it definitely is much lower than it used to be. But it has also dropped off for me. So my number 7 now, Dead of Winter.
Okay. Wow.
All right, Josh, what is your number 6?
Oh, my number 6 is Risk Legacy.
Oh, okay. I did not know what to do with legacy games. That was one of the things I
Yeah.
was really struggling with.
I consider not putting it on because it is a legacy game. But Risk Legacy was so important
Yeah.
to me at the time. I didn't realize how big that. First of all, it was the first Risk I've ever played. I'd never played regular Risk growing up,
Oh, okay.
so it was my first introduction to Risk. I mean, not I shouldn't say that. I knew what it was. I just had never played
Right.
it. It wasn't my introduction to it. But it was my first time playing a legacy game, and it just does it so well. Like we bought a second copy of it when we finished, and we never finished that one. But that's because people stopped hanging out with each other and all these things. But
Right.
um, yeah, I love it. I think it's such an easy recommendation to anyone who is looking to get into legacy games,
Yeah.
and it's challenging, but it's fun. And removing the co-op that you're used to having in a legacy game and making it against each other, I think really makes that separate itself from like Pandemic Legacy or something like that, where you're working together on a common goal. Um, so like knowing like in Risk Legacies, there's certain things that someone could do that were gonna open up a new mystery box or something like that, or finding out there was something on the bottom of the game that you didn't even think to take the
Yeah.
insert out, and it was
Yeah.
a whole playable uh character thing, if I remember correctly. Unless I'm thinking Pandemic. I might be thinking Pandemic Legacy. But Risk had it too. It was like a folder, and it was like, open this if when you see this or whatever.
Right.
um I just maybe it was probably like a nuke or something, I don't know. But yeah, I just really love that. And it's on that my list because it will always be my favorite board game experience of not of all time, but in that list, right?
Right.
So that's why it's on my list versus like it just solely being for the game itself.
Gotcha. Yeah, of all the legacy games out there, I have actually never played Risk Legacy.
It's so good.
Yeah, I want to. I mean, it is
Yeah,
considered the first legacy game, but yeah. Awesome. All right. So Josh is number 6, Risk Legacy. Sorry, I'm writing these down. All right.
that's okay.
My number 6, actually, I guess technically is also a legacy game. I didn't
Okay.
really know how to put this in there, and this is another game that I'm
Oh,
very surprised is on my list because
okay.
I knew I liked this game, but I didn't think I liked it this much.
Is it My City?
It is not my city. No,
Okay,
it is
good.
not my
I was like,
city.
that can't be in your top 10.
My number 6, Josh, is Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle.
Whoa. I hadn't
I
even considered that.
Is that a good or a bad thing? I don't know.
It's neither, I don't think.
Yeah, so this is a game, and part of the reason I might enjoy it as much as I do is it shocked me. I thought this was going to be some IP
Oh, yeah,
cash
yeah.
in, like not. I did not think this was going to be a good game at all. But it combines two things I really enjoy. One being a legacy game, but I don't really think of it totally as a legacy game because obviously you can still continue to play it afterwards. But also then deck building. I enjoy deck building, and it's something I really like. And I am, I like Harry Potter. I'm not like a super fan, but I enjoy Harry Potter as a world. And then when this came out and the feedback about it started to be pretty good, I was like, yeah, let's go ahead, give it a whirl. And I really enjoyed my time with this game. I thought it was great. It was a game that we played through pretty quickly and then like kind of started over and played through again. And that is the nice thing of that, even though it is a quote unquote legacy game, it isn't something where you're like literally ripping up cards and things like that. You can kind of reset everything and play through the campaign again. So it's almost more of like maybe a campaign game than a legacy game. But I really enjoyed it. The deck building, if you're not really into deck building, is still super approachable. So I think if you're a Harry Potter fan, especially, and want to get into deck building, it's an easy game to get into. I think it was enough of a quote unquote game that it's a good way to kind of introduce people to concepts that they'll see in other hobby board games if they're not used to those, with an IP that I think is palatable to most people. So I'm surprised at how much I like this game. I do think that I didn't expect it to be as high on my list as it is.
Yeah.
But it's a game I really enjoyed playing. I would play again. And I even thought about shoot skis. Maybe I need to dust this off and play it again. There is an expansion.
I was gonna ask if you got it. It's I have it right
The
here.
there's two, I think. There's Charms and Potions. And then I think there's the Monster Box of Monsters, I think is the other one.
Monster Box of Monsters. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one that we have.
Yeah, so we've played the Monster Box of Monsters. I don't believe we got the Charms and Potions expansion, so that would be the other one that we'd have to get. But yeah, overall, Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle, I really enjoyed. I'm surprised that this was as high on my list as it was. But that's
Yeah,
my number
me too.
6.
Nice.
All right, Josh, what is your number 5, sir?
My number 5 is the oldest game on my list. It is a game that I consider a perfect game. And that's Pandemic. Base, regular, OG Pandemic.
Great pick.
It really, again, introduced me to this type of game, this style of cooperative game, and this type of difficult game. This Pandemic can be all of those at once or none of them at all, depending on your luck. I guess it's always difficult. So it will always be difficult.
Yeah.
But it depends, you have roles like for each player. And then if you're playing with few players, you're really losing out on some of those things. But when you play with more players, you have more danger. Like, it's just like, I don't know. It's a beautiful game, and it's not. And by looks, it's a very ugly game by looks. They could really probably update that map board. But I think I didn't get they did the 20-year edition that was like super expensive, and I don't even know if they changed the way the board looks.
Oh yeah, I don't know either. Now that you say that, yeah.
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be pretty. It could be though. They could do that if they really wanted to. It's just a system that has been copied and borrowed since it was created.
Yeah.
And for a good reason. It's just a phenomenal game. With cubes. Go figure.
Yeah.
You don't need much, I don't think, for it. It's great. I love it. And anyone who's interested in board games or looking to get into board games should own a copy of Pandemic. I have my original copy. I'll never let that go, no matter how beat up it gets.
Yeah.
Because it's just one of those games.
Absolutely wonderful game. Happy it's on your list. This is where I got a little this is when I really started thinking about like where legacy games should fall, because I was like, man, would I pick Pandemic? But like, man, if I think about the games I've enjoyed more, like I've enjoyed the Pandemic legacies more than I enjoy base Pandemic at this point.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, yeah. So, but still, I again, Pandemic, I'm always down to play. So awesome pick. 2008, man, who would have thought, eh? My next game, my number 5, is a game that I tend to, and this will make more sense here in a minute. I'm surprised at how quote unquote light some of the games are on my list and how heavy some of the games are on my list. And this is one of the games that is definitely going to be on the light side, but I've also decided that there's clearly a theme for a number of the games on my list as well.
Okay.
Because I really apparently like when things are outside. So this game, my number 5, is Parks.
Oh, okay.
So
That's a good one.
Yeah, so released in 2019. Board Game Geek has a weight as a 2.12. So pretty middle of the road. But this is just one of those games that when you sit down to play it, you kind of lay it all out. The art is absolutely stunning, and you have a board in the middle of the table that is just it's not even much of a board, really. It's just kind of like a timeline of walking through different parks, if you would, or locations. And so you just move your meeples, and you have two meeples that you can move, and you're as you're going through, and you stop at each one. So you get different resources and things like that, and you can then use those resources to like purchase visiting national parks and all these good things. And there's multiple seasons that you play through. Highest points at the end wins. Really nice like inserts, and the game is really well put together, really affordable for the quality of the development, but the parts are just beautiful. But I don't know what it is about this game. Like every time I sit down to play it, I'm just like, gosh, this is just like pretty straightforward, pretty fun. But again, thoughtful, interesting decisions to make, deciding
Yeah.
which of your meeples to move, because you get into these areas about like you get like campfires that allow you to like kind of flip things over in ways that you wouldn't otherwise, but you also have to stay within like a certain range of people, because once everyone else gets to the end except for your one person, like they have to come all the way to the end, so you might like miss out on opportunities to do things. So there's still like thoughtful, interesting decisions. You kind of have to keep an eye on what other people are doing, because you need certain like resources per se to like go select certain parks. But if they have the same ones you do, are they trying to take the ones that you're going after? So you got to be thoughtful about that. And does it help to like go further up to like be able to purchase that sooner, but then you'll miss out on this other thing that you really want? And it's just a lot of really thoughtful decisions in a really beautiful game. There are expansions for it. There's like the Nightfall expansion, which is pretty great, and then the Wildlife expansion, which I've not played with yet, but the Nightfall expansion is very good. So overall, again, a game that I had heard good things about, a game that um is pretty light, but a game that I ended up really, really enjoying. So I was surprised. It is, I think, like number 150 or something on the Board
Okay.
Game Geek list. So pretty high,
Yeah.
higher than I thought it would be. But that's my number 5, Parks.
Nice.
All right, Josh, what's your number 4, sir?
My number 4 is Wingspan. Again, this gets back into the opposite of Pandemic. It's very nice to look at, great artwork. And then, yeah, I just, would you consider it a worker placement game? I guess it's kind of like a hybrid worker placement game,
Yeah, I
maybe.
mean, I mean, it is a little bit of it. I always kind of think of it as like an engine building game, but
Yeah,
the way you get it is by like placing out the eggs and things like that,
yeah,
and
that's
collecting the
that's a
cards.
better
So
way.
yeah,
I wanted to get a worker placement game on here. I think I settled for this one as one of those, but you're right. It's not. It probably isn't at its core, but I still love it. I love the artwork. I love the facts about the birds. I love the board itself. I just really appreciate the design of this game, and it's challenging, but once you pick it up, you like it's pretty good. Like once 3 or 4 games, like you kind of got it down. And then they just did such a great job with the digital adaptations too. So it's one of those things that lives in two different worlds as a pretty great product, and it shows based off of the board game's design. Again, like you said, this is Elizabeth Hargrave. How she like entered the board game world was
yeah,
with this game.
yeah.
Um, it's pretty impressive, and this is one of those games where you want to show your friends like who don't know board games, like you got to look at this one.
Yeah.
Like check this out. This is what board games can be, and just like a great example of style and substance. Like it's not just a pretty looking game. There's stuff going on in there that keep it challenging and entertaining. And I even bought Wormspan. Like, why? Why did I do that? Um, but I think it's really cool. So I thought a lot about where I wanted to put on my list. I knew it would be on the list, and I also think this is one of those games where we could very easily just pick this up off the shelf and play it. Just this is one of those ones you kind of want a little bit more time for,
Hmm.
but it's great. I love it. So that's my number 4.
That's a great pick. And also, Josh, I mean, look at that. Number 30 overall on the Board Game Geek Top
Yeah, okay.
100. So,
I'm a
like,
popular, I'm a popular gamer.
yeah, you're
I
hitting
don't think
those.
for myself. I do mob thinking.
You do the hobby board games just the same.
Yeah.
All right, Josh. So, my number 4 is I went back and forth on this. I had 2 games that were fighting for this spot.
Okay.
And I ended up selecting this one. And I was just talking about how I have like two styles of games on my list. One that is like these really like simple, thoughtful decisions, but overall pretty straightforward games.
Yeah.
And then I have games like my number four. Josh, my number four game is A Feast for Odin.
Okay.
A Euro as Euro games get, designed by Uwe Rosenberg, released back in 2016. Uh, on this game, it is a points driven game that has a ton of different ways to get to victory. But you have multiple boards that you're playing off of, so you have like your kind of personal like farm slash farmstead homestead that you start with, that you can then, if you want to add like islands and things like that to it as well. But what is kind of interesting about this game is that when you start, you are already 86 points in the hole. So when you start, the game board has negative 86 points on it in little like a negative 1 point increments, and your goal is to get all of these different resources and things to like cover up those things so that you can actually start to make positive points towards victory. The first time I played this game, did I maybe end up with a negative score? Perhaps I did. Who could say? Who could ever say? But that's one thing that first is potentially overwhelming to people. The next thing then is that on your turn, you have to pick. This is an action selection, right? You put your worker out to select the action that you're going to do. Josh, there are 61 different actions to pick from.
That's you're describing my nightmare.
So there's 61 actions to pick from, and yeah, so that's what you're deciding. But realistically, like that's the extent of the game. It is like, if I put my worker here,
Sure.
I do this action. Like that's it. Like I mean, you have to then figure out like what all those actions are and the things that you get from them. But really, how you play the game is like, pick what action do you want to do. That's it. That's pretty
Piece of
much how
cake.
you play it. So it is very thinky in the sense of like you have to understand like what action you want to select, what it does, what resources it gets you, like what resources you can then take to turn into other resources that will then get you these tiles, because the tiles that you're laying down to cover up all those negative points are different shapes. So you want certain shapes to be able to like get into like different grooves and all this other stuff. But really, like how you play the game is like just pick an action. Just pick one. What one do you want to do? There's only 61 to pick from. And I think just that idea of like there really truly is like no quote unquote wrong answer.
Sure.
There's just more right answers, right? And I think that's the thing that's really neat about it. This was in a stiff competition with one other game that is another heavy Euro that I decided to pick this one instead, just because the other one is a 2-player only. So I went
Oh,
with this one because it is a 1 to 4 player. So I do appreciate the fact you can play it by yourself. I typically still play this at 2. On the Board Game Geek Top 100, this is number 23. So again, me, being the stereotypical gamer that way. But I really enjoy it. It is very heavy. I would only recommend it for very specific people, as you can just hear about. But it is not the heaviest game on my list. So
oh
that's still
boy.
to come. But that is my number 4, A Feast for Odin. All right, we've made it to the top 3, Josh. What is your number 3?
Well, my top three will probably be no surprise to you or anybody who knows me, but my number three probably will be a surprise to people, and that's Gloomhaven. Gloomhaven is my number
Wow. Okay, I thought
three.
this would be higher. Yeah.
And I'll tell you why it's my number three. It's because it's a campaign game,
Yeah.
and while I'm sure I know there is replayability in Gloomhaven, there isn't for me. We finished that game. It took us like 3-4 years to do it, but we finished it. It was great. I had such a great time playing it. Um, it also, like, I'm playing Frosthaven now, so it also doesn't make me necessarily feel like I'm wanting to play Gloomhaven, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So maybe if I wasn't playing Frosthaven now, this would be higher on the list, but I feel like I'm still getting that filled. Not to take anything away from it. It's a great game. It's a great dungeon crawler RPG style game. It's not for everyone, but you can play with, I think 4 is the max, but it's just like great if you can get a solid. This is not a game I would ever want to swap people in and out of. I know that you can do that,
Right.
but that's not how I would want to experience it. This would be like you get your core group; those are the people that you always play with, and if one of them can't make it, you don't play that day. And that's why it took us so long to play it. Also, pandemic happened, so that also affected how long it took to play. But yeah, just a very great story, very entertaining. And I love the character progression and the retirement um, goals in the first game, where you can work towards getting a new character and feeling rewarded with that, like from these mystery envelopes. You don't know who you're going to get.
Yeah.
A lot of the intrigue in that game. Uh, I think and I preferred over Frosthaven as well, just mechanic wise. And I wish I played the second edition to see what they changed, but yeah, I still love it. So Gloomhaven is my number 3.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, I really expected that to be higher. But I mean, 3 is obviously still very, very, very good. So,
Yeah,
um, my number 3 is a game that I thought might be slightly higher, but I'm pretty happy with it being number 3. Um, my top 3 games kind of rotated between each other, but this is also tied for what is one of the newest games on my list because this came out in 2021. Had a chance to play it not long after that. Immediately fell in love with it. And it just incorporates so many of the things that I love in games, and that's Arc Nova.
nice.
So, Arc Nova is a game about basically planning and designing a zoo, and that you have both cards that you're using, as well as then a player board that has a zoo on it that you're getting hexagonal you're getting
Hexagonal.
hexagonal tiles that fill it up, but then those tiles are different shaped and different sized. So you got to kind of figure out how you're going to plan your zoo appropriately to make that happen. But what I think really made me fall in love with this game is that there is a lot of, like, you have all these different cards that have different animals and enclosures and all these things on it that you use, and they have special abilities. But really, on your turn, you have 5 action cards, and what's so interesting is, like, the action that you take, um how powerful that action is determines by the slot it's currently in. So if you haven't taken action in a while, it slides further down the row, which means when you take the action, it's far more powerful than an action that's like that you had just taken. So if you do something twice in a row, the second time you do it, it's way less powerful than the first time. But if you wait on things, it becomes far more powerful. You can upgrade some, but not all of these as well, to even be more further to add further power and further abilities to what you're doing. So there's just so much, again, flexibility in what you're doing, because you don't necessarily know what cards are going to come out. You have different boards that you can get and different setups that you can get to kind of get the things going. Again, overall, it's a pretty heavy game, but the actual, like, on your turn, you're really just taking basically one of the 5 actions, right? So it's just deciding, like, which of those 5 actions you want to do, kind of what options you have based on what everyone else is doing. And as I've kind of talked about, like, obviously I clearly like nature and outside and things like that, because
Yeah,
just this idea of kind of building this zoo and having this, kind of putting together this little board in front of you and making it look all neat is just something I really adore. So, a lot of people said that when the game Earth came out, that Earth kind of replaced Arc Nova for a lot of people, but it definitely did not for me. And it seems like, Earth has kind of fallen off a bit, though I still also enjoy that game. It's definitely not in the top 10 for me. But Arc Nova is a game that really has just resonated and continues to resonate. And I'm always down to play it. And the fact that Matthias, we who designed it, this was his first game to me, is just like mind blowing, because I'm like, this game
yeah,
is so cool. But that's my number 3 is Arc Nova.
nice.
Josh, what is your number 2?
My number 2 is Century Spice Roads Golem Edition. Uh, it could you could interchange it with my number 1 any day. I think that the two of them could be, but right now it's my number 2. I love it. Again, a great, beautiful looking game. Taking a great game and changing the art style to something a bit more vibrant and bright. Century Spice Road's a little like, it's still very pretty, but it's kind of like, I don't know what the right word would be. Grounded, workmanshipy. Like, it's just like of the people.
Yeah.
So yeah, Centuries adds those really cool golems and all these gems and the production that came with it as well, with those little like AC Moore Michaels gems that come inside each box. Just really nice, and again, it's one of those games where uh, it's luck based mostly, I guess, but easy to teach and very fun to play with, like from 1 to 4 players, or 2 to 4 players.
Yeah.
The player count, I think, I don't know that it makes the game better or worse. I think it's a rare game where I'm happy at any player count playing
Yeah.
that. And the games don't take very long. They're very replayable. Um, I just love it, and it doesn't hurt that I got to uh, interact with the creator of this game and get to talk to him about the design of it and how and just kind of like knowing, like we talk about in board games, there's typically, unlike video games, it's a studio for video games, it's a designer in board games. So I know, like a Matsuchi game, like I'm going to like it because of his style. And this is just, if someone asked me pick an Emerson game to play, this would be the one to start with. Just a great game
All
overall.
right.
Love it. Number two.
So Josh, my number two is the lightest game on my list.
Okay.
Is the quote unquote, easiest slash by weight. And it is a direct crossover with you. My number two is
Oh,
Century Golem
yeah.
Edition.
Look at that.
I think you summed it up great. Like, this game is one of those that it is super, super easy to teach, still thoughtful decisions to make. And specifically for me, it's Golem Edition because I think Golem Edition just is a stunning game. It just
Yeah.
the art is amazing. It looks beautiful. The pieces, the components are just top notch, and it's still really affordable. So it is one of those games that I am always down to play it. I have no worries about teaching this to someone who isn't really into hobby board games. And yeah, Emerson's designs I've always said are extremely elegant, right? Like, really, like, you're looking at it, you're like, okay, this is awesome. Like, I know exactly what I need to do. It all makes sense. Seems to be like a big fan of like that, like, kind of pushing things off the end of like rows types of a deal. Like, he really seems to like that, and I think this game does it spectacularly. So, huge fan. Always down to play this. And I think it's a great, great, great game. It'll be in sharp contrast to my number one, but my number two game is also Century Golem Edition. So,
Sorry,
Josh.
she bit my wedding ring while you were talking to me, got her teeth into it, and was pulling it off of my hand. I had to put her collar back on.
The Adventures of Being a Cat Father.
She's very feisty right now.
She is very feisty. Why is she so feisty?
I don't know. She's even taking medicine to cool that down. And it seems to be doing the opposite. It's more gamma radiation, not
She's
less.
like, I'll show you. Try to chill me out. I'll show you.
Yeah, look at go away.
Oh, man. All right, Josh. What is then, sir, your number one?
My number one game of all time is the game that I never play enough. I get so much enjoyment out of it every time I play. It is meant to be played with friends. It is probably very late on the Board Game Geek list. It's Betrayal at House on the Hill, of course. I just love that game so much. It's actually killing me that I own the legacy version that we've never played.
Yeah.
And I own the third edition, never played.
Wow.
It's killing me that I have not played the new updated version of it. And because there's just so much to play. And I really want to get those same people back together to play it. So it's just about finding the time. Besides that, I shouldn't be griping about not playing it. I love it so much. I couldn't even tell you the first time I played it. I don't remember how it was introduced to me or even when, or who I even played it with. But I know that the second I played it, I was like, this simultaneously reminds me of games I played as a kid. While like kind of like these old games of like, what was the game that they just Key to the Kingdom and all these kind of like cheapo kind of kids games, but then it feels like you're playing like an Arkham horror game or like even like a Mansions of Madness game. You have silly details about your characters that you're playing. You're doing silly things like splitting up. And then it was the first game that ever introduced me to a trader mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't just a regular trader mechanic. This is a huge part of how this game is played and how it works, where at a certain part of the game, someone in your group 99% of the time. I think there's like a one time that nobody is. Finds out they're the traitor, and it's not for anything that they did. It
Yep, they
just
just are.
is the game is like, hey, you were working with these people on a common goal, and now you're not. And now you're gonna leave this room. We would like, and you have to read this to yourself, and then the group will let you know when you can come back. And then, like, that's still so, excuse me, so cool to me. I'm gonna choke because the cat was just near me. No, my allergies are gonna kill me. Um, it's just so much fun, and it really changes the tone of the game from one of those social games where everyone's talking and hanging out to everyone versus one person. It's a ton of fun. I'm sure that's not for everybody, but I will never say no to play this game ever. Um, and I don't play it enough, but it's still my favorite game of all time.
I have never played this game, mostly because I have never. It's a 3-player minimum game, which makes
Yeah,
sense because of of that almost necessary traitor. I do think one of my favorite things about Betrayal at House on the Hill, though, is if you look at images of it, there's a whole bunch of images of people trying to like flatten the cards, like the
yeah,
little the tiles for the
yeah,
rooms, which I just think is hilarious. Because apparently they bend a little bit. But I assume this would be your number one, because I know how much you love this game. But yeah, I've yet to play it, but I definitely want to. So awesome, Josh's number one, Betrayal at House on the Hill. I do hope you get to play a Betrayal Legacy soon too, because from everything
yeah.
I've heard, it's even supposed to be even better than Betrayal. So
Well, I know two people who are listening to this podcast, and maybe I can convince them to start a session of that game.
awesome. All right, so my number one is a game that I did not think was going to be my number one, and honestly, it kind of makes me feel a bit like a hobby board game snob
Ooh,
in some ways.
okay, interesting.
It is the heaviest game on my list, by far. Well, I should say by far. It is the heaviest game on my list. It is a really well loved game amongst hobby board gamists, and it is, I think, also maybe the highest game. I can't remember, or close to at least the highest game on the Board Game Geek Top 100. That is also on my
Okay.
list, and that is Spirit Island.
Oh, nice. I love it.
Yeah,
That
so
is surprising. I love that. That's number one for you.
yeah, so and Spirit Island is number one for me for a number of reasons. Number one, it is a very challenging, very heavy game, which I do love heavy games. Number two, it is cooperative, which we love cooperative games. I love playing cooperative games. It's just something that I really enjoy. Number three, variable player power. This is like one of my favorite things in games where, in this game you're playing is different spirits, but like they all play very, very differently, and some of them get super, super complex. And I think the biggest other reason that I really like it is thematically, like there's this is so stupid, but there's so many board games that are focused on the idea of like going and taking, right, of going out and like taking land and kind of going out and doing those things. And this is the exact opposite of people are coming in and trying to take your land, and you're trying to fight back against them,
Yeah.
and it's really, really hard. Like it's very challenging to do. And I think this game is hard enough that when you do win, it feels like a huge accomplishment. But when you lose, it never really felt unfair. Like it didn't feel like the game was like pulling tricks on you, or that it was like just the odds were so stacked against you. It was like, oh shoot, if I just done this one thing. It always feels like if you had just done this one thing differently, that you would have been able to maybe like get to another turn. If you got to another turn, then maybe you could have done this other thing. So it never really feels like you're like, oh, we never had a path. It always feels like I should have done something different, as far as that goes. So yeah, it just is interesting, and I don't think the game is meant to be like some commentary on imperialism or anything like that, but it is definitely an interesting like kind of spin on that idea. And it just is such a thoughtful, challenging, interesting approach to games with that has like and in some ways um will always be like expandable, because those spirits you can always introduce new spirits,
Yeah.
right? And there are so many like individually designed ones that you can find, or ones that people have like created on Board Game Geek that you can download. It's just such an interesting, cool game, and there's such a strong community around it. And I think one of the things I really enjoy about it is that even though it plays 1 to 4 players, I do think it really sings at two, and that's what my typical game group is, right? Is playing with 2 people, is playing as 2 people, so it just really fits there. So this is a game that I had meant to get to the table for a really, really long time, and when we finally got it to the table, I immediately loved it. So yeah, it is my now number one game, Spirit Island.
Nice. We'll have to. I've only played it. I have it. I've only played it once. I'll have to get it to the table more to enjoy. I think I didn't play it again because it was so very hard.
Yeah, it's hard. It's definitely
But
very, very hard. So
yeah, but I
um
bought the insert. My box insert sitting on top of it, so I must have liked it enough to want to keep it.
awesome. Real quick, because obviously this has been a very long episode already.
Yeah.
Did you have anything else that was vying? Any honorable mentions?
Oh, I mean, like I had games like Odin's Ravens was on there, like one of my favorite 2 player games. Pathfinder Adventure card game was on my
Oh,
short
awesome.
list.
Yeah, mine too.
Tokaido, Lords of Waterdeep. Obviously, Settlers of Catan was on my short list. It could have been number 10. I was like, why? But why do I keep putting it on there? Nobody cares. Like everyone knows it's a good game
I really thought for a moment there you were about to like come out and
for
say
number one.
Sentinels of the Multiverse,
Oh,
and I was like,
no,
wait, this
wait.
whole time you actually like that game?
I love it. Yeah, it was a ploy. How about you? What about your
So my
honorable
my two
mentions?
main ones that were like more legitimate ones. One of them was Power Grid. I've always really enjoyed Power Grid. One of those first games that really, really got me into the hobby. And the other one that I was debating between this and A Feast for Odin was Fields of Arl, which is another Uwe Rosenberg game. It's basically a 2 player only game though. But I think really, really similar. A lot of peat bogs in that game, if I recall it correctly. But yeah, I just think that A Feast for Odin I like just a touch better. The one that I wanted to put as my number 10, I really just thought of like I don't even know that it's that great of a game, but I just have fond memories. And I actually, when I was looking through things, I was like, oh man, I still have this game, and I pulled it out and had to replace the batteries. Josh, that's Drop Mix.
Oh, I have it. I considered when we had our dumpster last week getting rid of it. I
Oh
was
really?
like, it's still up on my shelf, and I was like, maybe I should introduce my son to it. Maybe he would love it.
Yeah, it is because yeah, is it a game? I guess technically it's more of an activity than it is
Sure.
anything for me. But man, I really did love Drop Mix. I had so much fun with that thing. It was such a good time. So, oh, poor Harmonix. They tried so hard. But anyway, yeah. So Harmonix with Hasbro Drop Mix. So that was I had considered, but cool. Well, listeners, we'd love to know what your favorite games are. Let us know. And what did we whiff on? What did we not include that we should have? I'm sure that you have many things that we missed on. We'd love to hear what they are. But with that, it's been a very long episode.
Yeah.
This helps inform our video game conversation, so we'll maybe cut a couple things out to make sure that next episode's a little bit shorter. But we'll move on to our recommendations for a well-rounded life. Obviously, we're a gaming podcast, but we want to give you one other recommendation, suggestion, or thing we're currently into that's helping us live that well-rounded life. Josh, what's your recommendation this month?
My recommendation is actually something you might have access to if game share works the same as purchases. This might be in your movies on your Xbox that you can watch.
Yeah, I don't know if it does, but I'll have to look.
Yeah, and that's Transformers One. We've been meaning to take my son to this for a while, and we just never got to the theater. I considered taking him this weekend because it is still an A theater, but it would have cost more to go see it in the theaters than to buy it digitally. So I bought it digitally on Xbox, and we watched it this evening. And I got to tell you, this is so good. It is phenomenally well done. And I think what made me realize that was I don't know, I was like watching it and like I'm like, wow, this is like a storyline of like a regular live acted Hollywood script of a decent, like good movie. And it's just like they did it justice by giving it more than just a kids movie. Like it's not really a kids movie, it is, but it's just there's so much more to it.
Right.
It's a great origin story. It sets up like what is now going to be for them a money making thing, but maybe some more good movies. But it's essentially you have these. I think it's Brian Tyree Henry who's Optimus, and Chris Hemsworth as so I'm sorry, Brian Tyree Henry is Megatron and Chris Hemsworth as Optimus. So now you got some new young-ish voice talent starting with a new film. I feel like I'm like mumbling all over this, but essentially, I was very surprised at how good this movie was.
Uh-huh.
How just expecting another movie at the Transformers level. Although I should be say also Rise of the Machine. What was the new one that just came out? Rise of the Beast or Rise of the
Yeah, or
Machines?
yeah, something
That
like
was
that, yeah.
awesome. That was
Okay.
very good. Undermarketed, which caught me by surprise. Transformers One not undermarketed. Totally nailed the marketing. But I would say check it out even if you're not a Transformers fan. It's just a very good story and very entertaining, and there was some pretty cool moments in it.
Gotcha.
Transformers One.
Awesome. I I never would have thought of Transformers being, good again, but
Yeah,
here we go.
same,
Here we go.
same.
So my recommendation is actually based off of a recommendation that Josh and Donnie gave to me when I was jumping back into trying to, watch some horror things. And that is a movie that came out back in 2022, I
Yeah,
believe. And that is a movie called Talk to Me, which is a horror movie about, according to IMDb, quote unquote, a group of friends discover how to conjure spirits using an embalmed hand, and they become hooked on the new thrill until
yeah,
one of them goes too far. Um, if you read the thing, it sounds pretty ridiculous, and how it actually is introduced actually makes way more sense because, like, I was like, how does this make any sense? This seems super stupid, right? From
yeah,
a conceptual, like when you just hear that, but then when you like actually watch and see like how and why they introduce it, like why people are participating, you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense, right? Like I totally get it.
yeah,
I was really surprised. Number one, I after I watched this movie, I like went up and looked up who these directors were,
yeah,
and I was like, what have they done? They have like a really popular YouTube channel.
yeah. That's how
That
they got famous. Yeah,
yeah, that's how they got famous. And one of them has credits on the Babadook for being camera and electrical department. I mean, like like
yeah,
these are the things that we're talking about. But yeah, they have a really popular YouTube channel called Raka Raka. And then they went on and released this movie called Talk to Me, which is honestly a pretty darn interesting film. It definitely has a few parts of it that are pretty, like if you're like gore averse, that are pretty
yeah,
gross. But overall, it is not a movie that is focused on trying to gross you out. There are like the violence that is there is very intentional for a reason. It actually ties into the story pretty specifically as to why it's happening that way. But it is a really interesting story. It's a thoughtful thing to think about of like what might someone do in this situation. And yeah, I was actually pleasantly surprised of like, yes, this is definitely a horror movie, but overall it's actually kind of like just a good film. Like it's just a
yeah,
good movie to watch. But it is currently available on Paramount Plus. That is Talk to Me. So if you have a couple nights before the end of spookiness, if you're listening to this before Halloween, and you want to watch something pretty spooky, I would definitely encourage you to check it out. So with that, Josh, what do you say we wrap this show up?
yeah. Let's do it. Thanks for joining us, everyone. In addition to finding us on Twitter and Instagram at Board with VG, you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/boardwithvg. So feel free to give us a 5-star rating over there. Also, if you want to communicate in the more long form or you're just not feeling social media, please feel free to shoot us an email at boardwithvg@gmail.com. We tag our stuff when we post with hashtag boardwithvg. Even if we don't post, you can post. And if you put that hashtag in there, we can see what you're playing. And whatever podcast service you're listening to us on, we encourage you to give us a stellar rating. That is, whether you're downloading us from the Dice Tower Network feed or our very own standalone Board with Video Games feed. You can find me on all the things at Why So Serious. That's SIRRIUS. Kyle, where can people find you?
So you can find me on all the usual places: Twitter, Instagram, PlayStation Network, Board Game Geek, Xbox Live, all that fun stuff, all at Psychocross, CYCOCROSS. As always, if you have suggestions for future topics, be sure to reach out to us on the social media, because we want to talk about what you want to hear about. Remember, next month will be our top 10 video games of all time. And until then, remember everyone, whether it be board games or video games, never stop gaming.